Three, two, one.
Skadoosh! Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Franchise Deep Dive with Jake and Josh, the podcast where we break down, dissect, and discuss all of your favorite and least favorite movie franchises. I'm Jake.
And I'm Josh.
And we thought, what better way to kick off the springtime, get out of that cold weather season. Hopefully it's finally warming up for you guys. I know I'm excited. We thought the best way to kick off spring was with something a little light, a little fun, a little more easily digestible than some of the other stuff we've tackled. So we thought we would do our first animated series, and that brings us to the Kung Fu Panda Quadrilogy, which was a trilogy up until this past year, where we got Kung Fu Panda 4. And yeah, I don't really think we have anything else. We might as well just get right into it. I do want to say, though, Josh, you had never seen the Kung Fu Panda movies, correct?
Nope, somehow I have not seen them.
Now, do you just hate animation, or did you just never get around to these?
You know, if you asked a bunch of my friends, they would say I'm actually partial to animation. They think I'm like obsessed with animated movies.
Ooh, okay.
But I think it's because they just don't like them as much. But yeah, no, I dig animation. I don't know. I didn't even try to avoid this. I just never
didn't get to it.
Just never got around to it. And man, well, you could talk about your history since you actually have a history with it.
Yeah, I don't have a super in-depth one. I had seen all three of them, obviously 2008, so I was like 11 when the first one came out. I remember really enjoying it. I was a decent age for the second one, and then the third one actually came out when me and you were working at the theater at the time, so free movies. I pretty much saw everything that came out at that time. Saw the third one, and, you know, I don't want to tip my hat to my thoughts on that one just yet, but yeah, I mean, I always remember really enjoying, especially the first two Kung Fu Pandas. They were just very different than a lot of other animated films. There's not a ton of, you know, DreamWorks or Pixar movies that are so focused on something like Kung Fu and all that. So, yeah, I just always really enjoyed them. It was fun, you know, obviously like a panda is like a fun character to like just visually look at. And I'd actually, when I was rewatching the third one and fourth one for this episode, I was watching My Family's Dogs, and my niece and nephew were there. And my niece is only like 8 months old, so she wasn't watching, but my 2-year-old nephew was kind of sitting with me, and he was just really kind of mesmerized by all the kung fu sequences, and he just kept going, whoa, it's a panda. So he seemed to really enjoy that third one. But yeah, I mean, I don't have like a super in-depth one, but I just really remember enjoying the first two, so it was really cool to just kind of sit down and revisit these. I don't think I've seen any of the three Kung Fu Panda movies in a really long time, so forgetting a lot of the details, especially about, you know, 2 and 3, as I had seen them way less than I think I'd seen the first one. Obviously, I was a perfect age for Kung Fu Panda 1 when that came out, so I've seen that one like a dozen times over. But yeah, no, I don't think there's anything else kind of backstory to really get into. Do you just want to kind of break into these movies?
I'm ready.
All right, we're cutting to the chase this episode. So let's start off, obviously, with Kung Fu Panda 1, released in 2008, directed by John Stevenson and Mark Osborne. If you guys aren't aware, a lot of animated films are often directed by two people. It's not uncommon. You see that a lot more in animation than you do live-action films.
Do we know why that is?
Honestly, no. I've always wondered, like, how, like, obviously a director always, well, unless you work on Marvel films, a director always has, like, a decent amount of input on what the project turns out like, and they're the ones who usually get the brunt of either the criticism or praise. But I've always wondered, like, what goes into directing an animated film? Like, what, because you're not on set, you're not directing actors. Maybe it's a lot of like work in like the pre-production and post-production stage, like, you know, helping with the storyboards, helping with, you know, the script, and then also sitting down with the animators and, okay, you know, that looks good and that doesn't look good. Oh, I actually want the character to express this way and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I'm not sure why there's two directors. Honestly, I wonder if anyone is a big animation fan, or you are an animator yourself and you're listening to this, we'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it if you know more than we do. We're doing a deep dive, just not that deep, I guess. But yeah, so directed by two directors, like I said. What were the names? John Stevenson and Mark Osborne, a budget of 130 mil and a box office return of 631 mil, Rotten Tomatoes score of 87%, and was also nominated for Best Animated Feature Film at the Oscars for that year, but lost to, I believe it was WALL-E, which WALL-E's incredible, so
Yeah.
I'm not super sad about that. But yeah, let me read the IMDb synopsis of this film, as I'm one to often go a little long when I'm describing the plots of these movies. So we'll kind of keep it, short and concise. But the plot goes as follows. To everyone's surprise, including his own, Poe, an overweight, clumsy panda, is chosen as protector of the Valley of Peace. His suitability will soon be tested as the Valley's archenemy is on his way. And that kind of sets the stage for this film. And so obviously you hadn't seen these films before, like you said. So what was your kind of first reaction, your initial thoughts on this first Kung Fu Panda film?
I was not expecting the style to be as heightened as it was in terms of like just its animation. Those 2D sequences are just so gorgeous, and I absolutely love 2D animation.
Same.
Does this movie mix 2D and 3D?
So it was actually I had come across while reading up on these films that especially the first two movies in the franchise, they kind of will use that 2D animation style, and then obviously a majority of the films being 3D animation. But there's times where they do blend that 2D and 3D style to kind of mix together to create like a really cool looking effect. And I know it's not super uncommon nowadays for animated projects to kind of mix and blend the two styles together. But I think around 2008, you didn't really have a lot of films that were taking that 3D animation and 2D and blending it, especially so like seamlessly together, which...
Yeah. Is that like is that mostly a DreamWorks thing? Because I know that's something the Wild Robot does too, is like they painted the backgrounds, but the animation themselves are like 3D, so it's a nice mix. They do like a blend of them. So I'm wondering if that's like just like a DreamWorks thing that they mostly do.
I'm not actually sure about that, if they were the ones to kind of pioneer that. But I do know, again, while kind of especially reading up on this first one. So first off, like one thing that you kind of get right out the get-go from just looking up information about these films, mainly the first and second film, is that just the amount of effort and planning and preparation that went into this first Kung Fu Panda movie. They took, especially the animators, I believe I read that they took, it was like a 6 or 7 hour Kung Fu class where they just sat and kind of observed just to get an idea of the movements and whatnot. And then also, we didn't mention the supporting cast in this film. Actually, we didn't really mention any of the cast, but obviously you have Jack Black voicing Poe, our protagonist of the film. And then you got the Furious Five, who are like the 5 Kung Fu masters of the Valley of Peace. You have Tigress, voiced by Angelina Jolie, Mantis, who is voiced by Seth Rogen. You have Jackie Chan voicing Monkey. Crane is voiced by David Cross, and I feel like I'm missing one.
Viper, right? Lucy Liu.
Yep, Lucy Liu, obviously big in the Kung Fu world, Kung Fu film world. You also have Dustin Hoffman as their master, Shifu. Who, can I ask you, what animal do you think Shifu is?
Well, I didn't know until like the later movies when he says it.
Oh, okay, because I went through all 4 of these
idea.
movies and didn't realize that he also was a panda.
Yeah, a red panda, right?
Yeah, a red panda.
Yeah. He's so tiny. I wasn't like thinking about it at all.
Yeah. No, me neither. Because you look at Poe, and he's also so down in the first movie on Poe at first. That's like part of the story.
Yeah.
And a part of it is like him just being this panda. So you're like, oh, that's a little bit of a species hatred going on there. You also have Ian McShane, who plays the villain of the movie, Tai Lung, who's a snow leopard. But going back to the animation and whatnot, it was really cool that all of the Furious Five are different animals, but each of them is an actual different style of Kung Fu. So like tiger style, mantis style, all of the monkey style. And what's really cool, especially, you brought up the animation and how, just pristine and clean it looks, but during the fight sequences and whatnot, which are just so well choreographed and well animated in this film, but they all fight like that style. It's not just like a design choice. Like when they're doing the kung fu, monkey fights like the monkey style. And even by the end of the film, when Poe is facing Tai Lung, he's fighting what's known as the bear style of kung fu, and uses a lot of techniques that are actual kung fu style, which I just think is just, again, just really cool attention to detail, and shows that like this wasn't just a, oh hey, we're gonna make a funny little movie about, you know, a panda doing kung fu and make it a bunch of jokes and stuff. Like they really put the time and effort into, you know, developing that, and not even just the kung fu styles, but the production designer and I don't know if it was the screenwriter or one of the directors, but they had done just like tons and tons, years of research. I think this film took around 4 years to make, because a lot of it was just stuff that DreamWorks and animated films had never done before. But in terms of the way it looked and it kind of playing into Chinese culture, the production designer and again, I don't know if it was the screenwriter or producer or director, but they had done just a ton, years of research on just Chinese culture and tradition. And you just, I don't know if it's just me, but you just really feel that while watching this first, and you know, obviously the second one too. But you just really feel that like attention to detail in so many of the scenes.
Yeah, so this movie has insane praise from like Chinese culture.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, like they were just saying how much Kung Fu Panda actually grasps what their culture is all about and how authentic it is. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, I mean, you know, I don't know much about the culture, so I was just like reading all that, and I was like, you know what, it makes sense, because this movie is so detailed in its like just overall imagery, and just like, yeah, I don't know, like I didn't know that, like how they trained, how much training went into like the different styles of kung fu. So that's just that's a cool note.
Not even that, it was I'd also read that they like the you know, production designer and the other guy, they, when doing the research and stuff, it like got to a point where they were meeting with like high-ranking Chinese politicians and people high up in like the Chinese government, to the point where like once the film was like kind of in the stages of being made, like the Chinese politicians and whatnot and government officials that they had met were like really, I don't want to say jealous, but they had said something along the lines of like how impressed they were, because even animated films made in China weren't really grasping that sense of culture and tradition and really paying attention to the fine details of like that culture. So again, just really cool. Just, you know, they really did the legwork in like making this film what it was.
I saw someone say like, why is the USA making better Chinese films than us? Like, how are they just making more like authentic pictures than we are?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was cool. It's, you know, I guess I haven't seen a ton of like Chinese animated films, or actually China is one of the fewer, or one of the foreign type of cinema that I haven't explored a ton of. Like I've seen some of the bigger ones, like In the Mood for Love, and you know, some Wong Kar-wai stuff. But in terms of just like animation and stuff, I guess I just haven't ventured that deeply. But it's, yeah, again, it's just really cool to hear that like they didn't just, you know, use the setting of China and kung fu and all of that stuff as like a backdrop. It seems like they really put an emphasis on making it a focal point, to the point where in the initial versions and drafts of Kung Fu Panda 1, it was originally supposed to be like a parody of kung fu and you know, Chinese action films, but somewhere along the way the directors said, no, we don't want to make like a joke out of this. We don't want to poke fun at Chinese culture and kung fu. We really want to make a great film that pays homage and pays honor to this culture and tradition. And again, in my opinion, you just really feel that in just so many of the scenes in this film. And I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that like this is like the most innovative, creative animated film I've ever seen, but you know, it's a very traditional kind of hero's journey type of arc for the character of Poe. But you know, it's the way that it's delivered that I think really separates this film from a lot of other animated pictures.
So would you say that this movie grew for you? Like, did you appreciate it a lot more when you watched it this time, or were you already kind of like on board with this movie?
I mean, again, I had always liked the first and second Kung Fu Panda films a lot. And then, you know, I just, you know, I don't want to lend my hand too much, but seeing the third one in theaters when I was like 16 or 17, I just didn't really vibe with it that much. And I think at the time I was just like, oh, maybe I've just grown out of this. But now, you know, here I am 27 years old and revisiting these movies and just being even more impressed. Like when you're a kid, you're just like, oh, that's like a fun, cool animated movie. Like you don't really have a lot of taste, and you don't really know what kind of movies you like or what to look for in a good film and not. But this time around, like obviously having my taste way more defined and knowing what I like in films, and again, just seeing that level. And the biggest thing I want to highlight in this film is the action sequences, because there is a lot of great writing. There's a lot of great character work, and albeit being a conventional story where you see that hero's journey play out, again, so much of it is like just the delivery, but man, those action scenes are just, they're just chef's kiss. Like to me, one of my favorite moments in the film is Tai Lung's escape from the prison, which is just incredible. And Tai Lung as a villain in general, I think he's in my opinion the best villain in the quadrilogy. I know some people disagree on that. Some people are a bigger fan of Shen in Kung Fu Panda 2, but I have my reasons why, and I guess I'll discuss it a little more. But
I'm excited because I want to talk about the differences between them, because I was kind of wrestling with who I liked more, and I think I know who I like more, but it's different cases. It's different reasons why I like them.
Yeah.
And I guess I got to wait till to talk about the second one where I can like kind of compare them a little more. But yeah, so I mean, when I was watching it, I was like, okay, so this movie's actually given a lot of attention, and I knew this had good, like a lot of praise. So I think I was already expecting it to be like very good. I think before I thought of it as like just a Jack Black Kung Fu, like literally just like a fun movie. I didn't expect it to go deep into the characters, which is what I really appreciate with these. I'm just gonna say these first two movies more, because I think the first two kind of like stand above the third and fourth.
Agreed.
But I'll get more into specifics. But yeah, like so, like as I'm watching, I'm like, okay, so now I'm kind of like just expecting really good choreography, very good action sequences. I was not expecting the development of like different characters and how well it was done. So I kind of want to just like talk about that a little bit.
Yeah,
now that you brought
get
up
right into it.
Tai Lung. I think something that really strengthens this first film is not just him as a villain, but how they treat his relationship with Shifu.
Yeah.
Shifu. And just kind of like building both of their just characters, where they come from, what their kind of morals and like I don't know, just the differences of like what drives them and what's important to them, and just like the battle between them, I think was really intriguing. I mean, Poe is obviously like he's the focus, so he's gonna have like some good, and he has like good arcs that happen in the first two movies, but dude, that end sequence when they're fighting was so well done.
So great.
You just get these like really tiny moments, and that's what I liked about this film in the second, is that you get very intricate moments of I mean, obviously the big moment for Tai Lung is when Shifu's like explaining. I'm trying to remember what Shifu says to him, and you just get that like moment of like he like pauses. And he kind of like has this like dilemma in his brain, but he goes back to like what he's driven to do is to become the Dragon Warrior.
Yeah.
So he's so blinded just by this like this drive, this like he needs this to feel complete, kind of like just, you know, because he grew up just that's all he had, I guess. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it really just I want to know why Tai Lung is like the number one villain for you. I don't know if it's like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's like that relationship that's built upon.
Yeah. And so one thing that I think this first Kung Fu Panda film and the second one do extremely well is I think it really develops not only Poe, but it develops the supporting cast extremely well. You don't get a ton of development with a lot of the Furious Five members, but I think you get enough of their personality and their on-screen presence that you do care about them, but especially Tigress, as we didn't really kind of go into the plot too much, but Poe at the start of the film he's working in his father's noodle shop, and in the film it's kind of funny, but his father is a goose, Mr. Ping, who owns a noodle shop, and it's clear from the get-go that Poe does not want to be working in this noodle shop. He's in love with Kung Fu, which leads to one of my favorite little moments in the film where they're picking the new Dragon Warrior, which is like supposed to be like the best warrior in all of the Valley of Peace and all of China, and he's supposed to bring peace to everything and save the world and all of that stuff. And so you get this kind of sequence where Shifu brings out the Furious Five in front of all of the Valley of Peace, and they're all there and they're all celebrating, and they're doing this little kind of demonstration. And it's at this point that Shifu's master, a tortoise, Master Oogway, is supposed to pick the new Dragon Warrior. And at this point, Poe just wants to sneak into the palace just to see the demonstration and to see who the new Dragon Warrior is. And you get this little moment when he gets there late because he takes too long getting up the stairs, which is a reoccurring joke in the entire quadrilogy. But he gets there late and he's trying to sneak in, and he keeps being thwarted by different things. The door's shut, and then he can't get in and all that stuff. And he's on this cart of fireworks, and his father arrives, Mr. Ping, and he's like talking to him about Noodles, and he's like, "Dad, I don't love Noodles. I love Kung Fu." And then the fuse goes out, and then it's like, all right. And then they kick off, and then he gets shot into the palace right as Master Oogway is pushing his finger down, and it lands on Poe. Obviously, now the rest of the film is Poe learning to become the Dragon Warrior and learn Kung Fu. And at first they're all very down on him. Master Shifu is very anti-Poe, and obviously the Furious Five are really upset because they thought it was going to be one of them, but specifically Tigress. And you come to learn why, and it goes back to that relationship between Tai Lung and Master Shifu. And what you find out is that basically Master Shifu is Tai Lung's adoptive father. He showed up on Master Shifu's doorstep when he was just a little baby snow leopard, and he raised him as his son to one day be the Dragon Warrior. But you find out through the past that through flashback sequences and whatnot, I think it's Tigress who tells Poe why Shifu is the way he is, why he's such a hard ass, and it's that it really seemed like Tai Lung was going to be the Dragon Warrior, but Master Oogway saw evil in his heart and told him no. And this caused Tai Lung to sort of snap, as Shifu had raised him with the expectation of being the Dragon Warrior.
Yeah.
Tai Lung turns evil, and Shifu tries to stop him, but all he sees is, this is my son. Like, I can't hurt him. He gets knocked out. Master Oogway does this crazy Kung Fu, pressure point thing, incapacitates Tai Lung, and they lock him in prison. And from what we see, the prison of all prisons. Nobody should have ever been able to escape from that. But then because Tigress is telling this story, you see why she's the way that she is. And it's because after that incident, Shifu never really treated any of his students the way that he treated Tai Lung, to the point where, Tigress Shifu was very hard on Tigress, and it never felt like Tigress could live up to his expectations. And so when she wasn't the Dragon Warrior and wasn't chosen, it broke her heart too. So you get a lot of little character stuff with other characters other than Poe in this movie. Again, you said that Poe is really well developed, and he is. Obviously, he's the focal point. He's the protagonist. He goes on the hero's journey, but you understand why Tai Lung is the way that he is. You understand why Shifu is the way that he is. You understand why Tigress is the way that she is. And you just get all of these little character stuff. But just going back to Tai Lung, I don't think the other films... I think Shen is a phenomenal villain, and Gary Oldman, as the voice actor, does an incredible job. But I think you just get more with Tai Lung in that first film, so that the final climactic fight with Poe... with Tai Lung, and even before that, when Tai Lung attacks the temple and has to face Shifu, and you still see that Shifu has a hard time fighting his own son. And to me, that just personal connection, those personal ties. And even though I really, really like the second film, Shifu, unfortunately, I think in 2, 3, and 4 takes a really, really heavy backseat. And that frustrates me, because I think Shifu is a really strong character. I love Dustin Hoffman as the voice for his character. But that part kind of disappointed me. But again, in this first film, you just get so much with those characters. So I think that's why I kind of prefer Tai Lung amongst the antagonists in the series.
It makes
I know. I've been wrestling with this all week between these two films. Well, I should really say all weekend because not like I watched them last week, but all weekend, because I think there is like the first one has its heights and then the second one has its heights. They tackle different parts. So like with Tai Lung, what I do love about his whole villain story is you get a more personal touch to it. You get a more emotional touch, which I think strengthens him. But I also think Shen is a more like, I'm not gonna say well-rounded because I don't think he like has like the depth as much as Tai Lung in terms of like emotional level. But I think he does have more screen time, I think. Right? I think.
Yeah, because a lot of the first film is Tai Lung is in prison and then he escapes and then he's on his way to attack the palace and to steal the dragon. We didn't really bring up the dragon scroll, but the dragon warrior is supposed to be given this scroll that'll make him the most powerful kung fu master in all the land, and that's what Tai Lung wants. So he wants the dragon scroll.
Yeah, Shen is just like Shen is like more just rooted in evil. Like he was evil from like kind of like when he was young, and I guess Oogway saw that in Tai Lung, but Tai Lung is also just trying to make Shifu proud, kind of, because that's how he was raised. He was raised with that one goal. And I like that kind of flaws Shifu a little bit. And he realizes that. He's like, I did wrong by just putting this on you. And only, like, you know, I think he has a moment where he like realizes he created this villain. And I like that it bleeds into Tigress. You get that little bit. You don't really get much from the other ones, but I think that's okay. You get enough character work where it's not like bloated. You know, you can't
develop all of them. It's a 90. We didn't mention the length, but they're all around 90 minutes long, so they're very short films. And so that even just that alone, like it being a 90-minute film, I was impressed with the amount of character work and development that we got, with just the amount of characters that we got, like just enough, in my opinion, where you care about all the characters. And you even, again, we kind of loosely brought up Poe's adoptive father, Mr. Ping, the goose. Even just their little dynamic, it was really great. And I think the idea of a character, you know, wanting more out of life and not being satisfied with with where they are and where they're headed is just a very relatable thematic thing that anyone can kind of connect with.
So I want to talk about like, I did see something that kind of said this and it made me think about it more. And now as we're talking about it, I'm kind of like, you know, thinking about it more and more. So the like dynamic between Poe and Tai Lung, they both come from like, they're very similar characters, but so different in terms of like, they were adopted. So they're both like adopted kids. And I like that you just get how you're raised, just like how like the nurturing just develops you. And Poe is like just raised. Ping is just, you know, he just like floods him with love. Like he's just like, Ping is like, I think the favorite character I think of this series for a lot of people. He's
hilarious.
He's like, and he's like, he brings a lot of heart to it, but he just raises him in just like pure love. And Shifu raises Tai Lung in just like this aggression, this like, I don't know, this just goal driven. This is what you're meant to do. So I like when you get to the moment where they're fighting, and well, first when he opens the dragon scroll, right? That's what it's called, the dragon scroll. And it's blank. So this one guy pointed out just like the wording and how much how much weight just even the words carry. When Poe opens it, he just says it's blank, it's empty. And when Tai Lung opens it, he says, "There's nothing there. It's nothing." And they were like, "You see the reflection." So like when Poe opens it, he says, "Oh, there's nothing. Like it's blank." And he said it's kind of like how, you know, when an artist sees like a blank canvas, they see potential. They see something they can make of it. And Tai Lung, because this is all he bases life around, and he sees himself as like nothing without it. I just, when I saw that, I was like, oh, that really like just creates a whole level of like just layer to their like dynamic between like good and evil, and like just different, I don't know, just a different type of character, but like they're kind of like raised from like very similar.
Great parallels. Like great parallel character. And I'm so happy you brought that moment up, because that was like something I highlighted in my notes. And it's probably my second favorite moment in the entire first film, is when because I'd never noticed that before. You know, again, we'll talk about it every time. But when you're watching a movie and you're really looking for small details, that moment when Tai Lung does open the scroll and it's the first thing he says is "it's nothing," and you see his reflection. It's just, again, it's like such great visual storytelling.
Yeah.
It's something you just don't expect from a kid's animated film like this. It's just like a very mature approach to it. And I love that idea of just how they were raised and just the parallels between those two characters. And, to me, Tai Lung is that character. He's a great representation of like that kid we all knew growing up who was the straight A student, who was great at all the sports, and they were the best on every sports team they ever played. And then they reach a point in their life where, they're not the best anymore. And they didn't hit that expectation that everyone had put on them. And because they had never experienced failure, they completely snap. And that's exactly Tai Lung's character. Shifu builds him up to be the Dragon Warrior. And when he's told, you're not the Dragon Warrior, it breaks his heart and leads him down this dark, evil path. And I want to talk about one of my favorite, my favorite moment in the film is when Master Oogway passes on to the spirit realm. Because I just think it's so beautiful in terms of writing, and B, the animation and the music.
Oh, I just meant the visual, like when those petals fly in the air when he. Man, it's so good.
It's just like not even just like in terms of like how crisp the animation looks. But just everything in terms of visuals in this movie. Like you highlighted how the film kind of opens up with like this 2D animated sequence, and the second film, kind of does use that too. I think actually all of them have some form of like 2D animated sequence in them.
Yeah.
But
I gotta try to remember the from the fourth. I think it's there, but it's not as memorable. Let's just leave it at that.
No, I agree. In 3 and 4, nothing is as memorable as the first two, and I'll go on record and say that. But we'll save that for when we get to those. But just not even just like, again, how crisp the animation looks, but like the textures of the characters and the fur and the way that the light is hitting the characters and the background. It just, all of it is just so well done. And you could just, again, you could just tell the amount of time, and obviously it has a high budget. 130 mil is not anything to scoff at. That's a lot of money for a film, and I think a large portion of that is like the voice cast being so.
Dude, they're stacked.
It's a stacked cast. I mean, which is, and I think they all do really, really good. I'm on record as saying I'm not the biggest fan when Seth Rogen voices characters, because a lot of the times all I can hear and picture is Seth Rogen. But there's two isolated scenarios where I really like Seth Rogen, and it's as Mantis in these films, and he voices a character in the show Invincible. He plays this character, Alan the Alien, and he does a really great job in that as well. But then you got a lot of films like, the 2019 live action Lion King, where he voices Pumbaa, and
it's weird though, because it's the same kind of job, but it's just crazy how it can like hit you differently. And it's like it's the same voice, but like, because I don't know what he does differently in this, because I think Mantis is hilarious. Like,
I love the side characters in this. The Furious Five are excellent in my opinion.
But I'm wondering like what it is that he does in this that he doesn't do in like, say, I don't really remember Sausage Party. I think he's in that. He's definitely in that.
He's the lead. He's the hot dog.
Oh yeah. And I just remember not liking that movie, but I don't remember if I really if it was because of like, it definitely wasn't just because of him, but like, what is it that like in this movie that like feels different? I don't know. Is it just like the writing? Is it just, I don't know.
I think it's similar with like Dennis Quaid as an actor, where like I know you're not personally a fan of The Substance, but I thought Dennis Quaid was very utilized very well in The Substance, whereas typically I'm not a big fan of him as an actor. And I do think there are just actors and voice actors like that, to where maybe they aren't the most talented all around, but when they're utilized really well and they're a part of a project that is clearly made with a lot of passion and effort and time, they just knew how to use him well, and they use him, rather sparingly. Again, you get enough of the Furious Five in this film, but you don't get a ton. And I think they really kind of walk that fine line of using them the appropriate amount of time, to where Poe is still the focus, but you do get enough of those other characters to just the little moments. But it's just I forgot where I was going with the Oogway thing, because I just had to bring up that sequence. It's one of my favorite lines in the film, and it's actually what I almost opened the episode up with, but I had to go with the classic skadoosh. That's it's just the staple of this franchise. But it's what Oogway says to Shifu, and he says, "One often meets his destiny when he takes the road to avoid it." And I thought that was such an amazingly well-written line, and it really comes into play in the film because Shifu sends, I forget what the character's name is, but he sends like a bird type character to go make sure that the prison is on extra lockdown for Tai Lung. And what happens is when the bird goes there and visits, they're all like, all the rhinos are there, and they're the ones guarding the prison and guarding Tai Lung. And they're showing him, hey, look how crazy this prison is. Nobody will ever be able to escape. And the only reason that Tai Lung is able to escape is because a feather from that bird floats down, and Tai Lung grabs it with his tail and is able to unlock his chains. Which, one thing that's really cool, and I didn't even realize this until I had kind of stumbled upon it while looking into this movie, is that I think it's Master Oogway. He does the pressure point attack. That's how he's able to incapacitate Tai Lung the first time around and sends him to prison. And it's not an uncommon thing in Kung Fu to know that there are certain pressure points in the human body that if you hit will kind of immobilize a person. But Tai Lung's restraints are specifically positioned to attack all of the specific pressure points of the human body, or I guess in this case, a snow leopard's body, so that if any form of movement would attack that pressure point. So that's why he has to like release that. So I just thought that was like a cool little detail to include. It's not like he's just shackled up. Like the shackles that he has are specifically there in place to immobilize him in case he tries to escape. But yeah, I just thought that was an incredibly well-written line. I also think Oogway has one of my favorite comedic lines in the film, and it's when I think Shifu approaches him later on in the film, and he says, "Master Oogway, I have bad news." And Oogway has, he speaks in parables, and he says, "Oh, there is no good or bad news, only news." And Shifu says, "Tai Lung has escaped, and he's on his way here." And Oogway goes, "Oh, that is bad news." And it just had me cracking up when I was watching it. Again, like it is a kid's animated film, so while there is a ton of like great emotional beats and character development, it doesn't skimp out on the jokes. And some of them are very, kid oriented and aimed, towards children, especially when it comes to like Poe being an overweight panda. I kind of mentioned how, he struggles to get up the stairs and he's out of weight, and even going into the way that Shifu learns to train Poe into being a strong, capable Kung Fu warrior is training him through food, which I think is just kind of funny, but also just very, very important, because I'm someone who's very critical of the American public education system, to where for some reason for the last 90 to 100 years we still think that even in 2024 or 2025 whatever, that every single kid can be taught the same exact way. And I think this film is a perfect demonstration that every person is a unique individual and needs to be taught and tailored towards their specific needs and personality. And Shifu learns that in this film. So like not only does Poe go on a character arc, but Shifu does as well. He's very outspokenly against Poe at first. He's very down on him. And, by the end of the film, he realizes this was my fault. I tried training you like the other Furious Five. I need to train you as you. I need to work with your weaknesses and work with your strengths. And I just thought that was a really clever way to kind of incorporate that into this film.
I'm trying to look up some quotes here, because I didn't really write a lot down, but I remember watching these movies, and I just remember there's a lot of like good one-liners, or even just like there's like just very good like quotable moments. And I'm trying to remember when this is said from Master Oogway. He says, "Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That's why it's called the present."
Yeah.
And I don't remember when that's said, but that's like a really good line too.
I love that little moment.
Dude's just full of them.
Yeah, it's just they really managed to, again, like between the comedic beats and between the kind of sillier, more kid-oriented stuff, they really managed to fit in those like really emotional and like hard-hitting little moments of dialogue or monologues. And again, like similar to kind of Shifu, obviously he passes on in the to the spirit realm in this one, but Master Oogway is just such a great character, and he plays that, you know, wise old tortoise, which I really like. But again, they're not afraid to like have him have his comedic moments, and you know that whole little thing where, you know, right when he picks Poe as the kind of what I'm already forgetting, the Dragon Warrior. Yeah, when he picks Poe as the Dragon Warrior, and she feels like he's not the Dragon Warrior, that was an accident, and Oogway just hits him with there are no accidents. And it just, you know, again, you know, it's not to say that this is like the most creative or innovative script or story, but again, a lot of the time it's just about the execution of it, and they just do such a great job that, like, again, that final fight between Poe when he realizes he is enough, and when he, you know, kind of bequeaths wisdom to Tai Lung, is a great moment when Tai Lung opens the scroll and he has that it's nothing moment, and Poe kind of hits him with the, look, I didn't get it at first either, but that's the secret. And like, we didn't even kind of mention that one of the great setup and payoffs in this film is the parallel between the secret recipe of Mr. Ping's noodles and the Dragon Warrior scroll, which I think is great because you have, you know, it's set up where Poe wants to learn the secret ingredient to his father's noodle recipe. Come to find out that there is no secret ingredient. You just have to believe there's one. And it's very similar to the Dragon Scroll, where there is no secret technique. There's no secret little message written to unlock all this power. It's you realizing that you are enough. And it's great. I love it. I really, really love it.
Do you think, so like this was like my confusion a little bit, where Tai Lung is coming after them for the Dragon Scroll, and he attacks. It's when the five go to him because they don't believe in Poe, so they take matters into their hands and they try to stop him. And he you know, he obviously wins that battle. How long until from that moment until he like gets there? Because my only thing is that it seems very quick. Shifu realizes how he's supposed to train Poe.
Yeah.
It feels like a few days that it gets like mastered. So like that is like, you know, and I don't know. That's where I was like, okay, maybe if I didn't even know Tai Lung was like kind of like already on the move, if he was like locked up and maybe you had that moment, but I get maybe it kind of like then it interferes with like pacing and timing of like when you do that. I don't know, but then that just kind of felt a little too quick, too soon. It's like Tigress spent 20 years training. And I get like, you know, he found the way to train him, but he found the way to train Tigress, but it still took her and Tai Lung all this time, their whole like childhood and, you know, teenage years and adulthood to like become this master. Poe learns it so quick.
He does. And that was, while I was watching it, you know, I don't give this movie a 10 out of 10. It's not a perfect movie. It's, again, like we had mentioned, it lost to WALL-E. I think WALL-E's a bit of a better movie than this. You know, it's not as good as a film like Ratatouille, but, you know, I definitely think that is an issue when I'm looking for things that I'm gonna, you know, criticize in this film. It is a little bit quick. It does take really long into the film to where Shifu learns to train Poe, and Poe does kind of become a master of Kung Fu in a rather short time span. Again, it would kind of hurt the pacing of the film, but also it does kind of hurt, I don't want to say the logic, because I'm not trying to like dissect the logic of like an animated film about a panda doing Kung Fu, but like logistically, yeah, it does happen a little too fast. And maybe if it would have occurred a little bit earlier on in the film. But what I do think is really great is I think that it's handled pretty nicely when Tai Lung does arrive, because when so he defeats the Furious Five. They go to attack him and they meet him at the bridge. And again, another just phenomenal sequence. And one thing that I didn't really highlight, but I love in the first two Kung Fu Panda films how the color red is used, because I know that red is a very, very pivotal color in Chinese culture and tradition. So when like Tai Lung is escaping the prison has a very dark aesthetic to it, but the only lighting you really get is this like very harsh red light. And like when they're firing the arrows down at him, it's just this like sea of red light coming down, and it's just very ominous, very cool looking. So I just like wanted to highlight that. But in terms of the bridge sequence, it was actually a big problem when they were making the film, because the animators came to the directors and they said, we can't do this. Like, this is too difficult. This has never been done before. And that's the entire film too. Like, I don't know if I had mentioned that, but when they were like conceiving of this film and, in the conception stages and planning, a lot of what they were trying to accomplish was stuff that had never been done in animation before, never had even been attempted, especially by DreamWorks Studios. But the bridge sequence specifically, the animators had approached the directors and were like, this is impossible. We can't do this. And it was at that point that the directors knew that they had something special on their hands. And them being told that this was a near impossible feat to animate made them want to make the movie even more, because they knew, okay, we have something that's never been done before, so we really have to do this. We can really just stand out and separate ourselves. But
what about it was like impossible, or like felt impossible?
I
Like, what
think
about
just
that
like
scene?
the choreography and just the way that, the bridge sequence is animated as a whole. It's just like, we look back now and the movie is 12 years plus 5, 17 years old at this point. And looking back, it maybe doesn't seem like the most complex animated sequence. But if you look at it in the context of like 2008 and what preceded that film, especially in terms of like 3D CGI animation, nothing really had been done like that before. And I'm not sure, like, they didn't get into the specifics about what that made that sequence so difficult. I just remember.
I'm so curious.
Yeah, maybe there's like an interview, or maybe like a better, like, I was just kind of sifting through trivia and stuff, so maybe there's like an article written about it. I'll have to, look into that a little bit more, but I just thought it was really cool that the directors, when faced with like the most challenging part of the film, were like, yeah, this makes us want to make this movie even more. And I just really like that, because I'm so big on like innovation in cinema, whether it's animation or live action, just doing something that we haven't really seen before. And I just think that's, really cool. But I love how it is set up in terms of like the story, because Tai Lung defeats the Furious Five and allows Crane to fly them back to the palace. And they're like, why would he do this? Why didn't he just kill them? And you find out like, oh, it's because Tai Lung wanted to instill fear into the hearts of like Shifu and the supposed new Dragon Warrior and like the entire Valley of Peace. And it's at this moment where no matter how much Shifu has trained Poe and how much Poe has learned in the last couple of days, even Shifu is like, no, you guys need to get everyone out of here. I'll face Tai Lung. And you get that great moment where Poe realizes, as they're trying to evacuate the Valley of Peace, no, I have to go back. I have to go save Shifu. Like, this is my destiny. This is what I need to do. And it's just like a great turning point for his character, where he was so down on himself for most of the movie. And then even learning, after learning all these Kung Fu techniques and really just progressing so much as a character and as a Kung Fu artist, and then him making the decision. I think that's such a better writing decision than if Tai Lung had just arrived and Poe faces him immediately. Poe making that decision to go back and fight this, because Tai Lung, not only through just visuals, but just through dialogue, is built up as a serious threat. And we've highlighted in the past, whether it's Twilight or other films where they build up an antagonist of the film just to be dispatched really easily. Tai Lung is both told to us and shown to be an extremely powerful character. And when he arrives, I again, cinematically, I just love what they do too. It's not like super innovative. It's a little cliche, but like the weather gets, very dark and stormy, and there's like, dark, ominous clouds in the background. And it just kind of sets the stage for this final confrontation between Poe and Tai Lung. But like you said, that final animated sequence, and I love too, like I had mentioned at the beginning, how like Poe uses that bear style of Kung Fu. I love how Poe like defeats Tai Lung. Not just, he ultimately defeats him using the Wuxi finger hold, which is a nice little kind of incorporation, because it's brought, that little technique is brought up at the beginning of the film. But just the entire fight sequence, Poe using his weight and using his momentum and using it against Tai Lung. I think all of that is just really well handled. But going back to your criticism, yeah, I do agree. It is a little bit rushed. He does kind of master Kung Fu a little too quickly. Yeah. So that is like a criticism that can be, kind of levied against this movie.
I had to give something because, like, I feel like we're just talking about positives. It almost sounds like this is perfect.
It's not a perfect movie, guys, but it is a very damn good movie.
But let me say this: I love when movies have no business being good and they just are.
Yeah,
and this just falls perfectly in that category. Like I just love when I feel like that's happened with DreamWorks movies a lot. And I don't know if it's because they have such it seems like they have such an up and down. Like they're they're always being compared to like Pixar and even like Disney animation, stuff like that. And I feel like even I would always kind of like, they have Shrek, but I think at that time, what did they have? They had like Madagascar, maybe.
Madagascar fucking sucks.
Yeah, and
those movies suck.
I don't even remember that, but like I think they just had Shrek at the time that really, maybe How to Train Your Dragon. I don't know when that came out. That might have been 2008 too. Was it? No.
That was 2010.
So
How to Train Your Dragon came
yeah.
after. Yeah, I'd say Shrek, How to Train Your Dragon, and Kung Fu Panda are easily the big three of DreamWorks Animation, and three really strong franchises. All three of them kind of have... Actually, no. How to Train Your Dragon, all three of those movies are awesome. Though I am very excited to talk about those one day on this podcast, because those are three movies that I very much enjoy, and those might actually get better. Oh, Josh. Josh hates animation. No, those are great, and those actually, I think we'd have to revisit them, but from what I remember enjoying each one of those increasingly more and more. So that's not very common in animation or in any franchise. So, but yeah, no, there was just so much great stuff. One of the other cool, really interesting little tidbits that I remember stumbling upon was that Dustin Hoffman specifically had in his contract that he would only do the film if he was allowed, after their actual recording sessions for his dialogue, if he was allowed 5 hours by himself, no notes, no direction, if he was unhappy with a performance that day. So he was like really locked in.
Wow.
And gave a lot to this movie. So I think that's really cool. It just seemed like, again, that whether it was the voice actors, whether it was the production designers, the animators, the directors, the writers, all around, it seemed like everybody involved with this project really just put their best foot forward. They weren't just looking to, make a silly movie about a panda doing kung fu. They really just wanted to make something great, and I think it shows in the final product.
Mm-hmm. And I just love the closing of it, just that like Poe and Shifu get their moment of just like sharing the dumplings together, and it's just like, I don't know, I love that Shifu kind of like has a lot to learn still as like this master. Yeah. Also, and he's so like set in his ways, and how much he like it's the second one where he just talks about, he just says the day you were picked as the Dragon War was like the worst day of my life. And, like, he like really fucking hated it, and it's just nice to see that progression, and then just get that like moment where they get to like share food together. But yeah, and I'm trying to think of like some like other things I have to say about this.
The one I wanted to highlight, I was kind of just skimming through my notes. I love to not only just like the really well done animation, but something that we kind of highlighted in our Cornetto trilogy episode. So check that one out, guys, if you haven't already. It should be the one right before this. But we highlighted how important like transitions are, and how important it is to, not just always cut from scene to scene, but you can really get creative. And one of my favorite transitions is there's a scene where a bunch of confetti is blown into the air, and the camera kind of pans to the right, and the confetti turns into snow, and it's like the snowy mountains of like where Tai Lung is being kept. And I just thought that was like a really clever little transition that they did. It's really great. Even just the music.
Does Tai Lung die?
So I had to look this up. Tai Lung, when what is it called? When at the end of the fight, as we mentioned, Poe hits him with the whooshy finger hold, and which is where you grab the person's finger, and the slightest tweak of your pinky, what happens in the film is Poe catches him in the whooshy finger hold, twitches his pinky, and you get this huge like explosion of energy that kind of sends shockwaves throughout the entire valley, which is just a nice little visual. But what it does is it banishes the person to the spirit realm. So in a sense, he did he died in a similar way to how Oogway kind of, he doesn't die per se, but he does in a sense because he transitions into the spirit realm. So Poe banishes Tai Lung to the spirit realm.
Yeah, because people that have died are also in the spirit realm.
Oh, I have my issues with that. Don't worry. I have my issues with that, and it ties into my issues with Kung Fu Panda 4 as a whole. Because I think that's where your issues are probably lying.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'll tell you a little bit about that movie. I did a little research into that one. But yeah, I mean, my last little note too is just I really loved the music in this film. It would have been very easy for them to just do the generic, what a lot of modern animated films do, where they just use like popular music at the time. They use pop music, but there's a lot of like traditional Chinese music in this, a lot of Chinese instruments that are, known in their music world. Just creating that score, and also just like the sound design in the movie is really crisp and fresh. And again, all of that, the visuals, the music, the sound, the writing, it just all blends together, just creating a really, really nice experience all around. But I mean, I'm kind of tapped out on my notes on this first one. If you have anything else.
No, I'm ready to move to the second one.
All right, guys, we will move on to Kung Fu Panda 2 in just one moment after this short commercial break. All right, guys, thank you for holding on that brief commercial break. We are, of course, moving on to Kung Fu Panda 2, released back in 2011, 3 years after the release of the first film. This one is, of course, directed by a different director this time, one director, that being Jennifer Yu Nelson. Had a budget of 150 mil, so 20 mil more than the last one, and made a box office of 665 mil with a Rotten Tomatoes score of 82%, and at the time was the highest grossing film made by a female director. So that's pretty cool.
Is that the I wonder if is that the only female director in the series? I wonder. I guess we can wait to talk about that.
So, not to get too far ahead, but she would return for the third film, and there's a co-director of the third film, and I don't know if it's a man or a woman. So we'll look into that when we get there. But guys, Kung Fu Panda 2, the plot goes as followed. Poe and his friends fight to stop a peacock villain from conquering China with a deadly new weapon. But first, the Dragon Warrior must come to terms with his past. That's pretty nice and succinct IMDb. I like that. I like that one. So, moving on to Kung Fu Panda 2. We're going to start off the same way we started the first one. We obviously kind of lent our hands to, how much we enjoy the second film. But were you expecting, going into the second one, that you would like it or that it would suffer from sequelitis?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to kind of match the energy of the first one. And as I was watching, I was just like, oh, this isn't really standing on par with the first, right? And I was like, maybe, and then it kept doing it. I was like, all right, yeah, this is just good. I mean, there's no way around it. And Gary Oldman just like crushes this role. I like that you just get it. It just feels that you get a different kind of villain. Like I was worried that it was gonna just be okay. Now there's another villain that he's gonna go through the same motions, but it's handled so differently, like just different aspects of Poe's life that I just love for it. So
yeah. It could have easily ran into that issue that a lot of sequels do, where they delve into the protagonist's backstory a little bit and it gets muddied up. But somehow, in my opinion, they're able to just really balance his backstory with what's happening currently in the film. And obviously a lot of that ties into the villain of the film, Shen, the peacock, played by Gary Oldman in a really excellent fashion, in my opinion. Like, Gary Oldman, he really puts in the work in this movie. But I thought it was a really nice sort of parallel / continuation of the first film, where in the first film, the main villain, Tai Lung, has a very checkered past with Master Shifu. And in this film, you come to find out that Shen has a pretty strong history with Poe. And a lot of the film is Poe dealing with the elements of his past, some missing pieces. He's having these visions / dreams of what happened to him when he was a baby panda. Obviously, his dad, Mr. Peng, the goose, is not his real father, which leads to one of my favorite comedic moments in the entire series. And it's when Poe learns that he's adopted and he's telling Tigress, and he says it in a very dramatic way. He says, I just learned that I'm adopted. And Tigress just has this look on her face, and she says, and that must have been a big surprise for you. Like in a very like, how did you not know kind of way.
But he does say he did. He does say he did know. He just never said anything. Because he says I knew it, and Pink says, he says, oh, you did? Like, why didn't you say anything? He said, well, why didn't you say anything? I don't like. So
this is a weird pull. Have you ever seen the movie Easy A with Emma Stone?
Yeah.
It reminds me of that movie because in that movie she has a little adopted black brother, and they have that moment in the film because I think it's like Stanley Tucci, and I forget the actress who plays their mom in the film, but they have that similar moment where the little 12-year-old black kid is like, I know I'm adopted, and Stanley Tucci is like, what? Who told him? And it's just, it kind of reminded me of that. But yeah, so you come to kind of find out in the film, I guess kind of, learning more about Shen's backstory. In this film, it basically opens up with a 2D animation sequence, and it explains the backstory of Shen, in which his family kind of rose to royalty and prominence because they created fireworks for China. But fireworks, explosives. Shen saw this as a way to conquer China, to use the explosive stuff for the fireworks, but as weapons. So I think that, brings a very interesting dynamic to the film. But before we get into like how that is kind of implemented, I love too, because a part of the animated sequence and developing Shen as a villain right off the bat is that when Shen was young, his parents brought him to a soothsayer who's kind of like a fortune teller. And the soothsayer says that if Shen continues on this path, he will be defeated by a hero of black and white. Obviously, a panda, black and white. Mm-hmm. And what happens, and you're kind of told in this animated sequence, or at least shown, that Shen ended up using these explosive weapons to eradicate the pandas. And that leads into Poe's backstory and his origins a little bit. So you get a really nice start off to the film to where you already understand who this villain is, how evil he is, and the lengths that he's willing to go to conquer China. And I don't know, I really enjoyed opening up the film with that little animated sequence, because while the first film does develop Tai Lung throughout the film, it doesn't really kick off that way. You kind of start that film with Poe, whereas this film, you already get that villain origin story right off the bat. And I liked that as like the starting off point of this movie.
Yeah, so the opening sequence, I do agree that I like that it kind of throws you right in. You get set up with the villain. But one thing I liked that I actually didn't know this. Maybe I should have known this. I don't know. I didn't know where gunpowder originated from. So I didn't know it originated from China.
Yeah,
in the 9th century, I think it said. So I kind of like that it's still like putting focus into just tracing back to like just it's setting you in the culture. It's kind of like going back to the origins of gunpowder, which is like very violent. And I like that this movie doesn't seem to hold back on its. I think it gets a little bit more mature. It
definitely gets darker. I mean, the film practically opens up with basically saying that like the main antagonist of the film committed panda genocide.
Yeah, like completely. Which I did want to ask about the opening. Does the fortune teller says black and white? Do they then elaborate that it's a panda?
No, she just says that he'll be taken down by a warrior of black and white, and Shen takes this as a panda will defeat me, so he sets out to eradicate the pandas.
Well, because like I was like, but aren't there other like black and white animals? Then I was like, oh, but maybe like pandas I know are like more affiliated with China, so it's kind of like. But I looked up like the like white tigers, it could have been them too. But at the end, what's the fortune teller's name? Do we know?
Is she given a name, or is it just the soothsayer?
I think it's just that. So the soothsayer at the end, near the end, when she's like talking to Shen, or no, she's talking to Poe about like where like his idea came from, and she kind of says that what she told him, and she specifies that it was a panda. And I was like, oh, I wonder if she like if it's just said black and white, and then he finds out it's a panda. because she does tell Poe that she told him that it was a panda that would be like
I
one to wipe him
thought
out.
when they when Poe and the soothsayer had their conversation, I thought she says that I told him that if he continued on his path of warrior of black and white would be his demise, and she said I could have never predicted what he would have done next, and that was him.
She
trying
does.
To kill
I
the
think
pandas.
after she repeats the black and the someone in black and white, I think she then says a panda.
Oh,
So I was like, I don't like.
I'd have to rewatch that scene.
Yeah, I was like, wait, did she know it was a panda? Like, I wonder why it was so vague in the telling. Like, I wonder if she like. It's just a question. Like, it's not really a criticism. I was just wondering how much can she see? Did she see it was a panda? Like, I wonder why the fortune was so vague about it.
Yeah. No, there.
But,
yeah, I could see
But
that.
regardless, yeah, very strong open. And I like that. I thought it was just gonna, again, like I said, it just go through the motions. But this just tackles other themes of the whole thing of the second one is that finding your inner peace, kind of like accepting who you are. The first one kind of like deals with acceptance and kind of like your self confidence and stuff like that. But this one kind of just is more like kind of like acceptance of like where you came from, your past, like dealing with your past, I guess, and kind of facing that forward. And I think that's what really heightened this movie for me. Now, you brought up some issues that you had with it, just like some minor stuff with like Shifu that I did too. I was like, I almost feel like I wish Shifu was like killed off in the first one.
That's fair. No,
Because like I thought he was like at the end when Poe like thinks he's dying, and he says like don't die, and he's like I'm not dying. Like
yeah, I'm just resting my eyes. No,
Yeah.
I can totally see that, and it's not even really a criticism as much as like a personal thing, and it's maybe just because I like Shifu so much as a character in that first film that not getting to see him as much in the second film. It's not that it's a negative in the film per se, like it's not a criticism, because where a character like Shifu is kind of put into the background of this film, they definitely give you more with the Furious Five, especially, again, Tigress. I feel like Tigress out of the entire Furious Five is the one that gets the most development.
I love that you get more with her in this one.
Her relationship with Poe in this film, I think is really, really great with her just also, because the film does start out, and I like that we're not retreading story beats and character beats from the first film, because in the second one, once you kind of get away from that opening with Shen, you're introduced to Poe and the Furious Five, and it kicks off with him trying to see how many dumplings he could fit in his mouth, and the Furious Five are like all about it, and it's clear that since the events of the first film, they've all really bonded and become a really tight-knit group, which kind of gets a little bit thwarted by one of the driving plot points of this film, which is Master Shifu then tells Poe that he now is the master. So Shifu kind of does take a step back, not only just the story, but in just the world of the film, as he takes a step back, and now Poe is the one who's supposed to be training the Furious Five. And it starts off and it's going horribly, and Poe is realizing that, like being the Dragon Warrior, being this Kung Fu person, it was one thing, but now being responsible and being the person in charge of training the other Kung Fu masters, that's a whole other challenge. So I like that it introduces different character stuff. But in terms of, you were talking about how a lot of this film is kind of finding your inner peace. And I don't know if it was, I think it was one of the things that the producers and directors of these films had said was that the first three Kung Fu Panda films, they each deal with a different aspect of a person. The first is the conflict of body. So Tai Lung represents a physical threat. The second is mind. Shen represents a mental threat, and the villain of the third film, Kai, represents a spiritual threat. So I thought that was kind of interesting that the first three films each kind of tackle a different one. And what's great is, and again, this is where the third and fourth film start to suffer, is at the end of the first film, Tai Lung is built up to be such a physical, imposing threat. Like nobody except for Poe can take down. Even Master Shifu gets beaten by Tai Lung. So Poe defeating him, it's like what physical threat can really come back that's going to be as imposing as, Tai Lung is. And so you get a great sort of dichotomy of two things going on in this film. The first being Poe struggling with traumatic elements from his past, suffering from not knowing who he is as a person or where he came from in his origins. And then also you have the added element of Shen not being this, crazy kung fu master, but now he has weapons that kind of render kung fu pointless, so I thought that was just a really interesting way to like move the story forward in a way where we're not just hitting those same beats as the first film. We're evolving the story, we're evolving the threat, and we're evolving the characters in a cool, unique kind of way.
I loved it. I like, because that's a problem that I have with like a lot of, like, I know we talk about it all the time, and I think it gets a little tired, but like the Marvel franchise, every time there's a big bad villain, it's like they struggle so much defeating them, and then it's like you question the like believability. How are they defeating someone like Thanos, right?
Yeah.
But Captain America struggled so much with the Winter Soldier, with Bucky. It's like you kind of, it loses its like credibility almost. And that's why I was wondering, like, how are they going to do 4 villains? But the second one I was focused on, I was just like, how are they going to do a villain to top Tai Lung? And I just love that they brought like just intelligence into the, so yeah, like it never feels like the stakes almost feel raised somehow, but like not in like a like, oh, I was just lied to in the first one. There was someone superior, like more superior physically. No, this one's just a different type of. And I didn't know about the mind, body, spirit thing. That's a cool note. But
no, it's exactly that sort of thing where it's not just MCU films. It's a lot of franchises that are action oriented to where okay, here's the physical threat. Okay, and then we're on to the second one. Oh, it's another physical threat. And it's like it's my Walking Dead issue where, at the beginning of that series, whether it's the comics or the TV show, it's, oh, the zombies are the threat. And then by season 2 or 3, it's, okay, zombies aren't really a problem. Now it's, here's a human threat. And then they solve that human threat. And then things are good for a little bit. And then, oh, here's another physical threat. And then another one. And not to say that Shen isn't a physical threat, but it's a new kind of physical threat.
Yeah.
Plus you have that added element of Poe, he has at one point, he has Shen dead to rights. And because of his traumatic past and him trying to put the pieces together, he has that sort of mental blockage and he has like a freeze up moment. And to the point where the Furious Five are like, we got to go on without you. You can't be involved in this because you're too closely tied to this. You're too emotionally invested, and it's making our job impossible to do. It's you're blocking us up. And I just think that's a really interesting and creative way to just do a sequel to where, oh, we're not just trying to make a cash grab of the success of the first film, but we're actually developing and progressing the story in a way that feels natural. And, Poe has a great line at the beginning when this is where Shifu really just kind of dissolves from the plot until the end of the film. But he sends Poe and the Furious Five on their way to, I forget the name of the city. Why am I forgetting? They go to the city where Shen basically takes over. He takes over control.
Gongman
City, yeah. And not only the introduction scene in the opening of the film, that 2D animated sequence, but just Shen's actual first appearance in the film when he arrives at the palace in Gangnam City, and you have all of these like really powerful kung fu masters, and I forget all their names, but there's like 3 or 4 of them, and it starts out and they're fighting Shen like physically, and Shen, not just voice acting and the way that he's written, but awesome design. I love that he's a peacock. It's such a cool, unique design, and that's another one. We're just looking into these films. Apparently the animators had such an incredible difficulty animating him. I think they went on to say something along the lines of animating him in every scene was so challenging because it was like animating 6 different characters all in one, because of just just like obviously with the feathers and the peacock tail and just the fluidity of his movements. Like when he fights, he was actually, it was cool. Again, kind of bleeding from the first film, bleeding over. He was designed kind of in the first one how, Tigress fights in the tiger style, Poe uses the bear style, monkey, et cetera, et cetera. the character of Shen, his actual like physical combat when he's fighting was designed to mimic a style of kung fu that uses a metal fan to block attacks and to be used as like an offensive weapon. Obviously, like the metal fan kind of being represented by Shen's tail. So just kind of, again, just doing that legwork of, oh, we're not just going to make a new villain who fights cool. We're going to actually look into kung fu styles and see what we can kind of create from this long-standing tradition of kung fu and the different styles and how they influence how the fighting looks and feels. I also had read that Shen was actually originally supposed to be a character in the first film. He was supposed to be, I don't know if it was the Emperor, or he was supposed to be like the leader of the Valley of Peace, like the head of the Valley of Peace. But then that character ended up getting scrapped and wasn't in the film. But so I wanted to, I don't know if I said this on air or off, but there was one little fact that I read that I thought you would really appreciate. And it's that apparently someone of great talent was called in to do one of the final rewrites of this script. And that would be one Charlie Kaufman.
Really?
Yeah, that was one of the things I'd stumbled upon. Is that apparently Charlie, but you know what? I believe it for the sole reason that this is not the first time I've heard of Charlie Kaufman being called in to do a rewrite of a script. So I think that, what was that movie with Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley that came out a couple years ago? Chaos Walking. This film where a character lands on a planet. Daisy Ridley lands on this planet where it's just men and they can all just hear each other's thoughts and they speak like telepathically. Apparently Charlie Kaufman had been called in for one of the early rewrites of that script. And I believe it because one thing that's very well known about Charlie Kaufman is that he has a very, very hard time getting his films funded. So I think it's kind of like one of those one for them, one for me kind of things where he takes these little rewrite jobs to just bring in some money.
So what was his so he like did a rewrite of just a piece of the script, or like just a rewrite of the whole script, or
it didn't specify, but I just assumed that it was kind of one of those. They already had like some early drafts of the script done, and they just kind of handed it over to him and just asked him to add like a little bit of that, Charlie Kaufman flavor to it.
I wonder what he added. Does it say? Like what was kind of like his?
It does not specify what he had added, but if I had to guess, because one thing that's very prominent in all of Charlie Kaufman's scripts is like that kind of, and you do get a little bit of this in the first one, but a lot of that like struggling with identity, struggling with who you are, not feeling adequate. And whether or not that was present in the original version of the script, I'm not sure. But I could definitely see Charlie Kaufman influencing some of those elements as, like, again, a lot of his films, the protagonist usually deals with self-hatred and just that inadequacy as a person sort of stuff. So either way, whether it's true or not, I just thought you'd get a kick out of that.
That's
little,
good shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to just like highlight a big plus for me. Like, I'm not going to say anything. There's nothing to like talk down about with the first one visually, but this one I think just takes a step up. I love like the art direction around Shen just enhances him as a villain so much. I think there's so much attention to just like his surroundings. They definitely play with that red so much. I mean, it's like obvious, but like they have so much fun with it, and there's just so much like intensity with like every time he's in. Even like his feathers, like I love the white with like the red in there. It's everything's just so gorgeous to look at. But
it's such a visually aesthetically pleasing movie, and like it does have the benefit of being released 3 years after the events of the first film. So, a couple years later with technology wise, but yeah, just so much of what made that first film great. Not even just like the animation, but like, again, bringing over those textures and a lot of that great lighting. And like you said, the production design, the backgrounds, Gangnam City looks gorgeous. Like we already highlighted, the design of Shen is just awesome. But, again, like they double down on that usage of red, which is kind of weird because from what I recall, 3 and 4 don't really have that usage of red like the first two films do, where it's just very prominent in a lot of the scenes, like especially when later in the film, I guess it's like towards the end of the second act when Poe encounters Shen for the first time. They kind of attack his palace and whatnot, and everything's on fire and the building's being destroyed, and there is just like that harsh red, like dark blood red kind of aesthetic to it, which is again just a visual feast. But
and I think like before that scene, it might be when it happens when they're all like on their way to Shen, and it does that nice like that yin yang thing with like Shen's red and Poe's yellow, and they just like I forget like, but like it's just I love just like seeing how much fun they're having with playing with the colors and stuff like that, but it just builds his intensity as a villain so much more. I think it really heightens him, just mixed with the performance and everything. So like that's why it's hard for me to pick which one I like, because I do think that they work a little harder on Tai Lung's like emotional attachment, like they develop him that way. But this one, they just build a whole like world around this guy, and I love it.
They really do, and it's not even to say that like Shen has like a bad backstory or is poorly developed in an emotional sense, because one thing too, like you, I was toying around a lot because I had kind of placed these films sporadically throughout the past week. I had watched the first one and then watched the second one a day later, and then gave a couple days break, and then watched 3 and then 4 the following day. But I was really toying around with Shen versus Tai Lung, and while I did kind of settle on just liking Tai Lung a little bit more, one thing that's great about Shen is something that you brought up in the first film, is that kind of like nature versus nurture thing. And like while Shen is a little bit more outright evil and kind of psychopathic than Tai Lung is presented, which is funny because one thing that I didn't mention about the first film that I had read was originally in earlier drafts of the first Kung Fu Panda film, Tai Lung was written as a lot more sympathetic, and to me he still reads as quite a sympathetic villain. So I'm really wondering like what they had cut out to kind of minimize. They didn't want him to seem too sympathetic. They still wanted him to have this kind of menacing, intimidating presence, to which I think he really does. But even with Shen, like when it's presented his backstory, he's a child when he's basically told, hey, you're going to get defeated by this guy if you continue on this path. Like he's basically being told his future, and it kind of ties back into that first film where Oogway says, you know, when you're trying to avoid the path, you typically run into the issues that you were trying to avoid. As Shen, he takes what the soothsayer says and doubles down on it and goes even further, and that leads to his eventual demise, because had he never attacked the pandas, Poe would have never been found by Mr. Ping, which would have never led him to the Valley of Peace, which would have, you know, never led to him becoming the Dragon Warrior. So Shen, again, is ultimately responsible for his demise and downfall, not just because of his greed and, you know, wanting to conquer China, but because him making that decision in the past led to Poe being what he is. And I think that's just, again, a really clever way to tie the first film into the second, but also just to establish Shen as not just this psychopathic evil villain, but a character who at a very young age was told, hey, this is what's going to happen. And so I think that's very interesting, like the idea of destiny and fate, and trying to, you know, ultimately you trying to fight your own destiny and fate, leading to that eventual fate being, you know, sprung upon you. So I just think that's really clever setup and payoff, and it, again, really well handled in a mature way. And even like, you know, some of the sequences are really heartbreaking when you see some of Poe's visions and dreams where he's kind of reliving those traumatic moments as a baby panda, where his mother is like running away and trying to save him and stow him away, as Shen and his army of wolves is attacking the panda village and destroying everything. And it's really sad.
This one, I think, also elevated the like the 2D animation sequences. I think there's like a lot more in this one. Yeah,
and I think one thing really cool that I had seen was we had talked about it a little bit, but it like furthers that blending the 3D and 2D animation to points where like even more so than the first one, just like using that blend to create just like a very interesting, like distinct visual style. And I'm not going to say it was like the biggest influence, but like a film like in modern day, like the Spider-Verse movies, which have like a very unique animation style, blending those two kind of animation forms together and just creating a really like unique experience. But yeah, and that 2D animation is just fucking gorgeous to look at. It's just so nice to look at.
But yeah, when Poe goes into his backstory, which I mean, I wasn't expecting this movie to make me like tear up either, so like whatever.
Oh, it got the waterworks going.
Dude, it was like close. It was definitely close. Like it's just so, it's so you can't help but feel like just emotionally attached to them, and like what's happening is just really sad stuff. Like that's what I'm saying. I like that they really go into like people dying more in this one, which sounds like very like, you know,
but it's mature.
dark, but like and I well, first of all, I love that Shen just straight up kills that rhino.
Yeah.
And I love that, like, before that, the rhino tells him, your kung fu is no match for ours. And he just says, I agree, but this is. And it just busts out the fucking cannon.
Yeah.
And, like, it's just, I don't know. I just think it's such a, like, just such a clever way to, like, up the stakes almost with your villain when you already kind of, like, felt like you reached a height in the first one.
Yeah, and like tying it in, like you said, to like actual Chinese culture and like the origins of gunpowder and just all of that, like, again, research and like attention to detail. And like, you know, Poe has a great line when Shifu sends them off where he's like, how am I supposed to defeat a thing that like defeats Kung Fu? Like, how am that I'm paraphrasing, but he says something along the lines of that where it's like, I know how to do Kung Fu, but this renders Kung Fu useless. So, like, what am I going to do? And, you know, kind of flashing forward to the end when, you know, Poe finally realizes he is enough. And, it gives me more issues with the third film because it kind of renders the character arc into a little pointless, where Poe realizes that, because a lot of the film is him struggling with not understanding who he is, not understanding his identity, because he never knew his real family, never knew where he came from, and him kind of putting those pieces together as the film progresses, and then realizing and discovering that Shen is responsible for destroying all of the pandas and really kind of just, you know, killing Poe's family. And you kind of have that element sprinkled throughout, but like Poe finally coming to terms with that element and then getting that inner peace and then using Kung Fu to defeat the cannons at the end and like redirecting the blasts at the end of the film and the climax. And I love to, it's very simple. It's not the first film to ever do it, but again, it's just that like clever writing where Shen is defeated by his own equipment. Like the cannon falls on Shen, and I had to look this up too, but it kills Shen. The cannon falls on Shen after Poe redirects it, and it flattens Shen and kills him. Again, a little dark, a little mature. I mean, it's not the first animated film to have death in it, but like still like going that route to where it's like, oh, these you know, the world of these films has consequences, and it's not all, you know, there's so many films where it's like, oh, the main character, he can't kill, you know, the people can't die in it, we got to keep it, you know, kid and family friendly. And the Kung Fu Panda films really just are not about that. And they're like, hey, like, this is reality. This may be a kid's animated film about a panda doing kung fu and like silly little animals, but at the end of the day, it's not afraid to tackle those more serious elements and those more mature themes. But just Poe, you know, like I'm normally not a big fan of montages. Me and Josh kind of harped on that in our 50 Shades and Twilight series reviews, but I think the montage in this is really great because it's Poe realizing that the family that he's found in life is more than enough. Then you know,
it feels rewarding, like a rewarding payoff rather than just like a corny, you know, just like cheesily thrown in there.
Yeah, because in 50 Shades of Grey and Twilight, it's really just, oh, hey, remember these last few movies? Remember all these beautiful little moments? Whereas in this film, it's a genuine character moment where he realizes the thing I've been searching for this entire time has been right in front of me. And I just love that. And like, my favorite moment in the film is on the boat when they're on their way to Gangnam City, and Poe is just so frustrated, and he goes out by himself at nighttime, and he's trying to get that inner peace that Shifu has been talking about. And Tigress comes out, and they have this great back and forth, and, you know, Poe's training, and he's getting more and more frustrated, and it ends with Tigress just giving him a hug. And it's just like this beautiful little moment between these friends where she's like, I understand. I get it. And it like in that moment, like, it's not till later on where Poe fully realizes that the family that he's been searching for has been there the entire time. But that little moment plants that seed of, okay, so later on in the film, when they play that little kind of, you know, montage of flashbacks throughout the last two films, it hits you in the emotional feels because you're like, oh, these are all the moments that Poe is remembering to realize, hey, all I need is right here. I'm good enough. My family and friends are good enough. That's it. And I really love that. And I think it's just a really great, writing choice. And, again, that idea of, body, mind, and spirit. And it's just really well handled in this film.
I want to talk about like one of my favorite moments in this, one of my favorite scenes in this movie is when Shen and Soothsayer, when Soothsayer is like taken away, it's like right before she's taken away, and she's like kind of like telling him, he kind of has that Tai Lung moment a little bit. It's when he's kind of like talking about his plan and like what his goal is, and just like a couple lines when he's just talking about like the sacrifice he's willing to put China through for like the reward he thinks is going to happen, and she's kind of saying, will you then be satisfied? And then she says, will the subjugation of the whole world finally make you feel better? And he just says like it's a start, and she says the cup you choose to fill has no bottom, meaning like you're never going to be satisfied. There's never fulfillment in this like madness you're choosing to keep like putting onto the world, and it just keeps going. It's just like it just gets like more and more emotional, and she tells him it's time to stop, and he's just like he can't see. He's like, why would I do that? And she's saying, so your parents can finally like just be at peace and rest easily. And then he's like talking about how his parents hated him and stuff like that. And it's just a back and forth of her saying they loved you. You have no idea how much they loved you, so much that when they sent you away, it killed them. And then he has that really good line of the dead exist in the past. I must attend to the future. And it's just like completely just suppressing everything, all kinds of emotion. But it's when she says that they loved you, he has that pause for a second, and then he continues, and I think it's just such a powerful scene, and I like.
The Soothsayer as a whole is just a great implementation in this movie. And it makes me it sucks because, again, I think it's such a well-paced film, and I think they do just enough, and they do so much in terms of developing these characters, and Poe and Shen and Tigress and all of that. But there were earlier drafts of the script where they added more development to Shen, where the Soothsayer was not just a Soothsayer, but it was his nanny growing up. And the reason that the wolves are so loyal to Shen is that when he was a child, Shen was the only person in the palace in Gangnam City who treated the wolves like people and actually played with the wolves and treated them as equals and didn't, spit on them and look at them as less than. And I do kind of wish those like elements were kind of included in the film, but I still love how well developed Shen is. Like you brought up that great conversation, and just the fact that him realizing that his conquest is never going to be enough. He's not a Thanos, right? Where Thanos had this goal, he achieved his goal and really just rested in peace. Like, that's such a great part of Infinity War, where it ends with Thanos just kind of, spoiler alert, guys, for anyone who hasn't seen Infinity War. The movie's 6 years old, but, it kind of just ends with Thanos looking over the mountains and looking at the sun as it's setting in peace and realizing he's accomplished his goal. Whereas I don't think a character like Shen would ever get to that point, because like the Soothsayer said, it's a bottomless cup. You're never going to be satisfied. And I'm so glad you highlighted that, because I would have probably forgotten to bring that moment up. But it really is just such a great scene. And there's just so much in this film that I love. I'm going to bring it up more in the third and fourth film, but in the second film too, like you get, again, so many great scenes of like, of the Kung Fu and the way that it's animated, and the Furious Five, have even more of a presence in this film. I think I love, it's played up for comedic effects, but when Poe is kind of having, those kind of issues with his past and his family and who his father and mother are. And Mantis has a little line where he's like, man, I have no issues with my dad. My mom ate his head off before I was even born. But yeah, it's just, again, like whether it's the animation or the music or just how the film just sets up and pays things off, whether it's visuals or music that's being utilized, it just all, again, it really blends together in like such a great tandem to just take everything that the first film set up and just improve upon it. And again, it doesn't suffer from that sequelitis. I mean, how many sequels have we seen throughout franchises where the second movie in the franchise just does the thing that the first movie did. You know, I think back to years ago before screenwriter Max Landis was canceled for being a terrible, awful human being. For anyone who's a fan of the movie Chronicle, if you guys are fans of it, you can find the sequel script Martyrs online that Max Landis had wrote, and it's actually a decent script. It actually progresses the story, but when he presented it to Fox Studios, they shut it down immediately. And from what he says, again, he's not the most trustable, reliable source, but from what he says, Fox Studios basically said, no, we basically want to do Chronicle 1, but again, with new characters. And I feel like so many studios settle for just doing the same thing over and over and over again. Whereas, again, I feel like Kung Fu Panda 2 genuinely takes the story and moves it forward and moves the characters forward. It's not just, I've already highlighted, but it's not just hitting those same emotional beats. It's not hitting those same story beats. It's moving the needle forward in just a natural, genuine way. It felt like they had a story to tell, and it wasn't just, oh, hey, we have to scramble. The first movie was successful. Oh, okay, let's just do the same thing again. And I don't know. I really appreciated that. It just made watching it just a really enjoyable experience.
Yeah. I'm kind of like running out of notes here, but I do want to touch on another like very vital heartstring that this movie touches on. Yeah. And it's Mr. Ping. This guy also just bringing me close to tears. And listen, I love Poe. Poe did this guy a little dirty in the middle of the movie. I can't believe he just kind of left him with a goodbye. But like when, he's having that like inner like struggle of like, you realize this huge moment of your life is like kind of like a lie. And when Ping is like, he like packs his things, he packs his lunch and stuff like that, and he's like, you know, he doesn't want him to go and stuff like that, but he kind of like, I forget what he says exactly, but it's something like just like saying that he'll always be a son or something like that, and Poe doesn't answer, and he just says right, and then they say, Poe, we gotta go, and he's like goodbye, and he just fucking leaves, and it just has that like final shot of Ping just standing there so devastated, and I'm just like, damn, man, listen, this movie's really. You forgot the part
that breaks my heart. It's Tigress right before that scene ends. Tigress says, "Don't worry, Mr. Ping, we'll have your son back before you can say Noodles." And it does like these 3 little emotional beats, and then you get this like solo shot of Mr. Ping, and he just says like Noodles in the most heartbreaking, sad way. And again, like, it's not the first film to ever do this sort of dynamic where the adopted character wants to learn more about his origins and learn more about his real family, where he came from. But it really, again, it's about the delivery and it's about how it's executed. And you like you said, it really tugs on the heartstrings, because you feel like when Mr. Ping is telling Poe the backstory of how he found him and, what happened. And from there, he just raised him with all this love, and like how you had brought up in the first film, like how Poe was raised to how Tai Lung was raised. And again, you sort of get a similar dichotomy in this film, but again, like, it's very different. Tai Lung was given love from Shifu, and even though his expectations were built up and he was ultimately let down because he didn't get to achieve those dreams that he was promised, you have a character like Shen, and like that scene with the soothsayer where he was basically, he's like told, like, your parents loved you. Having to like lock you away and send you away, it broke their goddamn hearts. And like you said, it catches Shen for that moment, and then he goes back to like, no, I've gone too far. I have to keep going. And it's just, I don't know, it's just so many great little moments in the film, little kind of comedic elements that we kind of didn't really talk about or gloss over. I like when they're sneaking through Gundam City and they're like, they're in the, it's like one of those like traditional Chinese festival dragon costumes, and they're there. And I also just love when Poe's trying to sneak around, and he's just like, he's just this huge bumbling panda, but he's trying to be sneaky, and it's played up for comedic effect. But yeah, there's just a lot of great moments in this film, a lot of great character stuff. Again, the kung fu, the animation is spectacular. The music is continuing to be just excellent. Really great sound design, and just, I don't know, great character arcs for a lot of the characters.
Well, you get that huge payoff at the end, just that completed arc for Poe and Ping, when he returns home and he he comes to terms with who he is, and he acknowledges that he's Pink's son, and they just have that embrace, and it's just so good. The last fight I want to talk about for a second is obviously excellent. We can't stop talking about how good this animation is, but when Shen and Poe have their final standoff, and Shen kind of like causes his own demise. When that thing is falling down and he just fucking gives up, I love that moment when he just like closes his eyes. Like, I don't know. This guy's just exhausted. I think he's just like completely defeated mentally. He's just like I don't know. It's just that moment of giving up, kind of. Also, like, how you gonna outrun that? It's kind of like about to crush you in 2 seconds. So I just love that just little acceptance moment. It's just really, really, really good.
It's not quite as good as in Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2, where the one Volturi guy is about to die in that final fight, and he goes, "Finally."
I agree. Yeah, that is satisfying.
But yeah, no, I cannot agree more that the final fight is excellent. I just love that it's not Poe having to just defeat a guy in combat again.
For like no reason, really. I mean, it's like a reason, but this one is like, I don't know. There's just...
Yeah, and like we talked about, like that first scene with Shen, like it's very established early on that this is not going to be a kung fu physical threat. This is a whole other new kind of threat that's again, like, it's not just a threat to people, but it's a threat to kung fu. Like they say that in the film, like Poe isn't just saving the world, he has to save kung fu, and it could be seen as a little bit silly, but again, it's just very well handled. There's a lot of mature elements, mature themes, and it doesn't shy away from some of those elements. And again, I really appreciate it. And I really love this second film.
Did the very, very end almost like ruin it a little bit for you, or did you like it? Did you like the
little tease?
Yeah.
So I don't.
Because for me, it felt a little like thrown in there. Like, I didn't need that. It was like this. Okay, you're just setting up the third movie. Like It was so complete before that, and it's not like it ruined it for me, but I was just like, it's fine.
What ruins it for me is more so the execution of that setup in the third film. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
it's not as much like, it is a little bit too setup-y, but like it does. I do have that issue where it's like, it wouldn't have been so bad if like the third film had capitalized on it.
If it was like a setup, kind of like how Batman Begins, like really nicely sets up the Dark Knight, and you get a nice like payoff in the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
But yeah, and how does he know Poe's alive in that moment? I forget how. Like, what is it that caused him to realize that he's alive?
Does he receive like news or something of like a panda defeating Shen? I think it was something of that sort, where they get news that like a panda has defeated Shen, and that's when you get the "my son is still alive," which obviously sets up and kind of bleeds naturally into the third film. If you want to get into that, or if you have any more thoughts on the second one.
I am ready to go into the third film.
Okay, guys, thank you again for holding for that brief commercial break. We are back, moving on to Kung Fu Panda 3, released in 2000, and let me make sure I get this right. I believe it was 2016. Kung Fu Panda 3, released in 2016. So 5 years after the release of the last film. I believe, from what I know, the time between the first and second film was the shortest. We have 5 years in between 2 and 3, and then 8 years in between 3 and 4. So this was a little bit of a longer break. Again, released in 2016, directed by Alessandro Carloni and Jennifer Yu Nelson. So the director of the last one comes back along with a co-director this time. Budget of 145 mil, so 5 mil less than Part 2. Box office of 521 mil, and a Rotten Tomato score of 87%. So it has a 5% higher score from critics than Kung Fu Panda 2.
Crazy.
Absolutely outlandish.
Crazy.
Is ridiculous. Ridiculous. Obviously, let's just keep on the train of how we started the last two. After coming off the heels of Kung Fu Panda 2, if you could describe your feelings on Kung Fu Panda 3 after coming off the last two, what would it be?
I'm just decline.
Decline. I was gonna go with disappointment, but Decline is also a good one.
Yeah, and it sucks because like it doesn't feel like out of nowhere. It's set up from the second one, so you kind of expect it to kind of continue this level of quality, and it's not even bad. Like it's not even like this movie's bad. It just doesn't feel as like attentive to like this one just felt like more directed to kids, I think. And
yeah,
I don't know. It's the villain suffers in this movie, I think, a lot.
I realized before we get into it fully, I did not read the synopsis of this. So for those at home who have not seen it, I'll read the quick synopsis. Continuing his legendary adventures of awesomeness, Poe must face two hugely epic but different threats. One supernatural and the other a little closer to home. Which kind of ties into the ending of the second film, as we come to learn at the end of the second film, as Josh mentioned, that the pandas were not all eradicated by Shen, and some of them were able to get away during the attack, including Poe's father, played by Bryan Cranston, who did not voice him in the second film in those animated flashbacks. But they bring in Bryan Cranston. This was right around, I think, 2 years after Breaking Bad had wrapped up. So Bryan Cranston, this is when he really started to kind of start taking bigger film roles and, continuing the trend of getting really highly acclaimed actors to voice the villains or, to voice the characters in these films. Obviously in the first one, you had Tai Lung voiced by Ian McShane. In the second one, Shen is voiced by Gary Oldman. You get Bryan Cranston to voice Poe's father in this, and the villain of the film is a character called Kai, who is from the spirit realm and is voiced by one J.K. Simmons, 2 years off of his Oscar nomination of Whiplash. But I can fully agree. Whereas I think both had kind of talked about how we really struggled picking between who we liked more, Tai Lung or Shen, which I don't. Did you end up deciding on who you enjoy more as a villain?
I like Shen.
You like Shen a little more? You're not alone. I think actually a lot of the majority of fans and moviegoers who saw these films, a lot of people say that Shen is the best villain in the entire franchise. And again, I love Shen, love his design, love Gary Oldman. I can totally understand where people are coming from. I think I just like that dynamic between Tai Lung and Shifu. That really sells it for me in that first movie. But in this film, you have the character of Kai, who's from the spirit realm and breaks free from the spirit realm. And you get his backstory a little bit later in the movie, where you come to find out that Oogway, the tortoise from the first movie, who passes on to the spirit realm, years in the past, not Tai Lung, but Oogway and Kai were friends, companions of sorts, and to the point where Kai basically saved not Shifu. I'm gonna get all my characters mixed up. Kai saved Oogway's life, and they barely made it alive to this village where they were taken care of, and they were shown the kind of ways of Tai Chi, and that's where they learned a lot of what they know. And whereas Oogway kind of saw this Tai Chi and mastering of Chi as a thing that can be used for the good of humanity and the good of the world of China, Kai, on the opposite hand, saw it as a way of gaining more power and becoming stronger and becoming the villain that he would end up becoming. And at that point, that's when the conflict arose. You had this, master showdown between Oogway and Kai, to which Oogway traps Kai in the spirit realm. And I think they say in the film that it took Kai around, 500 years of being trapped in the spirit realm to finally break free. And so they do that kind of legwork in a sense of trying to build up Kai as being a bigger and more intimidating villain than Tai Lung or Shen. But in my opinion, it really does fall flat, and it's not J.K. Simmons' fault. But
yeah, which sucks because J.K. Simmons has such a good voice, and a good voice for a villain too.
Of course, yeah.
And it's funny because he definitely has the most intimidating voice out of probably all the villains' voices. But for some reason, he feels the least intimidating. Not even close. He feels very comedic almost, where it's goofy sometimes.
Yeah, and where Shen and Tai Lung both have comedic moments in those films, it never feels goofy. It never feels corny or cheesy, which is, they're kids' animated films, so impressive feat. But again, yeah,
there's like
you
a
said,
sinister humor to them almost.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Like when
it's very
Shen
sinister.
when Shen says the only reason I'm keeping you alive is because I find you mildly amusing. Like that's just a good line when he
That's
says
great.
that to Poe.
It's a great villain line. Yeah, I can't remember really a single. I remember so much of the things that Tai Lung and Shen say and do in these movies, and great moments from both of them. And we highlighted them in the last two movies, whereas Kai, I just don't really. His setup feels a little lackadaisical. It just doesn't hit in the same way. He doesn't really have an emotional connection to any of our characters. That, and not to say we don't care about Oogway, but Oogway passed on to the spirit realm in the first movie, whereas you have that connection with Tai Lung and Shifu that we highlighted. You have that connection with Shen and Poe's past. Whereas in this one, Kai is just related to a character that passed on to the spirit realm 2 movies ago. So you're not really given that emotional connection. You're not really given that driving force with his character to where you really care about his goals or what he's trying to do. And then they do this kind of thing now where he's got these like green spirit realm powers. And I guess I was looking into it, and I guess it's because in Chinese culture, green is seen as a sign of evil in their culture. So I guess that's what they're kind of playing into with the green eyes and the powers that he holds. And Tai Lung makes a small minor appearance in this film as not Tai Lung, but Kai has these charms or lockets or whatever of all of these master kung fu artists that he's stolen their chi from, and or stolen their spirits or powers from. I'm not really 100% sure, but I don't know. It just none of the emotional beats or story beats or character beats in this film really hit in the same way as the first 2 do.
I'm trying to brush up on like the plot because honestly, that like this movie just like
It's very forgettable.
It is forgettable, and it's kind of like it's like right in the middle where it's like I remember the 4th one a little bit more because I watched it more recently, but like I feel like I mainly like I remember him going like to his home of the pandas. There's like that there's like some like good moments this movie has. Like I do like that they kind of add the kind of like Battle of the Fathers, like the one that is the birth father, that, but like they don't execute it well. Like I like that it's there. It could be something. That's the thing. It had potential. Like they could have made anything work if they made this whole series work so far.
Well,
but
my biggest issue is, and I kind of talked about it in the second film, is that so much of what Poe goes through in his character arc and journey in that film is, in my opinion, severely minimized because of the plot in this movie. So much of the second film is Poe learning that his friends and family that he's gathered in his life up to this point are enough for him, and that his origins and his, I guess, quote unquote, real family, it doesn't matter because the people that he has in his life, they are his family, and that he is enough and he doesn't need that. And then you have this film where you get a lot of goofy stuff where, and I don't think we talked about it too much, but at the end of the second one, you get that, reveal that the pandas are still alive and Poe's father is still alive. And again, like we talked about, like the end of the second one where Poe and Mr. Ping, they have that embrace, and Poe realizing, you are my dad. And then in this film, it feels like you get that like goofy little battle of I forget Poe's dad's name in this, but Mr. Peng and Poe's real father, Lee. Lee. You get Mr. Peng and Lee, and they're just constantly battling for Poe's affection, and so much of that emotional prowess that was present with Mr. Peng's character in that second film, that heartfelt goodbye, that heartfelt embrace at the end of the film, Poe realizing, you are my dad, you raised me. Again, it just feels like we're doing that again. Even in the second film, like so much of that film too is Poe becoming their master of the Furious Five, and he's realizing teaching is hard, and I have to learn to teach these people, and that's a challenge in and of itself. And then okay, now we're suffering from that sequelitis, where in the third film we have another physical threat. Whereas the first one, right? Mind, body, and spirit. The first one, or the body, physical threat. Second one, the mind. Poe has to come to peace to defeat this threat, come to terms with his past and come to terms with his present. And then in this film, he's from the spirit realm, but I don't really see particularly what this film has to do with Poe's spirit other than Kai just being from the spirit realm.
I almost wish they just had a different design of a villain, because this guy, he looks like he's like almost part of the body, part of that mind, body, spirit. He's like he's just a jacked like piece of muscle. So I almost wish they had like I don't know any other animal that kind of like doesn't look like it's trying to top the physical threat of Tai Lung. Like I don't know. So
whereas like Tai Lung has like, you know, he's a snow leopard, and he has, again, he's that like that physical threat, master of kung fu, and he's got all of these, he's got like this technique where he can like, you know, incapacitate you by hitting the pressure points and all that cool stuff. And then, you know, Shen, strong kung fu artist, but uses machines and uses explosives because he knows that he can't defeat these kung fu masters. So again, you're elevating that threat, and now it's we're going back to the first movie where it's just another physical threat. Yes, he's from the spirit realm, but I don't know. And I guess you get some stuff where he like is able to possess or cause like other people, other characters to be possessed, and they're mind controlled at that point, and you know they get that like green glow to them and all that stuff. And it feels like they're not really moving that needle forward. And not to say that every movie does, but whereas in the second film, we highlighted how that movie really feels like a natural progression of that story, and it doesn't hit those same character and story beats. I feel like this third Kung Fu Panda movie, that's all it does, is it hits all of those same story and character beats that we have already seen and doesn't progress anything. Because again, I briefly mentioned it, but in the second one, Poe's made the master. He has to teach the Furious Five. Oh, that's a problem. Poe needs to learn, you know, different ways and learns to be a teacher and whatnot. And then in the third film, it's a village of pandas, his family and whatnot. And now he has to teach them Kung Fu and has to teach again. So it's like, what are we doing to progress this story? It's a similar threat. It's a similar premise. I
guess it's like harnessing the chi that Lee says he's going to like teach him how to do, which then comes back later on in the movie that I'm trying to remember. He like lies about that. He was never able to. And why does he lie? Just to like.
He lies because he knows that that's the only way to get Poe to come to the village with him.
That's really okay.
Yeah, and again, it's like, okay, so again, we're doing something similar to the Dragon Scroll. Mm-hmm. Where it's a lie, right? There is no secret. He's not taught that thing. So it's, again, we're just retreading stuff that we've already done. You're not presenting a new interesting threat. Kai is just a very, very boring villain all around. Again, like the design, like Shen has such a cool, unique design, probably the coolest design character in the entire franchise, in my opinion. And then you have this one where it's, yes, J.K. Simmons has a great voice. We all know that. And you know, I can't even, because like I brought up the show Invincible on Amazon Prime. It's my favorite airing show right now. It's currently in the middle of its third season. I look forward to a new episode every Thursday. J.K. Simmons voices one of the primary roles of that show and does a fucking amazing job. And it's not that he's not trying in this movie. It's just, we kind of talked about how it's utilization. Sometimes it's not the voice actor. Sometimes it's not even just like the actor when it comes to live action. It's how are they utilizing that character? And again, Kai just comes off as goofy. He's not really doing anything that we haven't seen with Tai Lung. He doesn't have like an interesting backstory. Like whereas Shen, you're kind of told, oh, hey, his parents sent him away when he was a kid. He like that traumatized him. He just wanted to like bring his family to a higher degree of like prowess and you know, all that stuff. And then again, what do you have with Kai? What are you given with his character? Like nothing.
I feel like a lot was kind of based around that spirit world, just to create those visuals. Cause I think that's a cool moment when Poe when he brings Kai to the spiritual world.
Yeah.
That's like a interesting visual scene. Not really interesting cuz like I don't buy into anything really at that point. Like I don't buy into the villain, I don't buy into like the threat or the battle, but I still think it looks good. Like I still think this movie kind of like it doesn't trail off until the fourth, I think.
In terms of animation, I can agree. It's not that the third film looks bad or looks cheap. Again, it came out 2016, so you get a couple more years of technological advancement. There's some nice looking animated scenes in this film. but where we kind of bring the element of, like you said, decline and disappointment in my eyes is the writing. I think the writing really suffers in this movie. Whereas there's kind of a reason that Shifu, like, again, we're doing the same thing. We're just removing Shifu, and this time we're removing the Furious Five pretty heavily too. Like, we're not getting really much development with them. And all I can really go back to is so much of that second film is building on Poe being at peace with who he is and being at peace with the friends and family in his life currently. And then we go to the third film and it's, oh, well, he's got to go, learn who he is and be with the pandas. And it's not even like mature or interesting themes or character work, because it's very, like you said, it's very aimed towards children. And again, they're all kids animated films. They're all aimed towards kids. But whereas we highlighted the adult mature themes in the second and first film, in this one, it's, oh, well, pandas roll. They don't walk. We roll. So, Poe's got to learn to roll down a hill and he can't roll properly. And, it's a joke because you got to eat like a panda. And Poe says, oh, well, I've always felt like I've never ate to my full potential. It's just like silly, dumb stuff like that. It's not really, again, you're not doing anything new.
The learning to be a panda, I just didn't do anything for me, and it felt like it was just like a comedy grab, and it didn't land for me.
The comedy in the first two films feels like genuinely good comedic moments, genuinely decently written, funny jokes. Not always. There's some jokes that we didn't really highlight them because it was more fun just talking about like all the positives in those first two. But there were some jokes in the first two that didn't quite land for me, or I felt were a little dumb or silly. But this third film, I feel like, just really doubles down on those dumb moments. And again, if it was complemented by maybe more interesting character work, or maybe giving Poe something new to do, giving him a new character arc, it would have worked way better. Maybe you could have used this opportunity to develop the other members of the Furious Five a little bit more. Maybe give a little bit more with Shifu. Maybe give a little bit more with Oogway. If you're going to go down the route of this villain Kai being tied to Oogway, then at least give us a little more with Oogway and him. And instead, it's just, oh, hey, Oogway wanted to use this power for good. Kai wanted to use this power for evil. The same thing as the second movie. Shen, his parents, they wanted to use it just to create fireworks, and Shen comes along. Oh, I want to use it for destructive purposes. So again, we're just doing the same thing that we did in the last two movies. It's like taking the greatest hits of those first two Kung Fu Panda movies and just meshing all of those elements together in the third film, but like in a really sloppy, incoherent way. I was just really let down by this third film.
Any positives from you?
It's not the fourth movie.
Yeah.
No, it's not a horrible movie. I think it's a fine enough movie for kids. Like I said, I watched the first two by myself, and I was at my parents' house for the third and fourth ones when I had put those on. And my nephew seemed to enjoy it, seeing the little kung fu sequences and seeing Poe. He thought, Poe was a funny character, and he just kept going, oh, it's a panda. So, like, obviously it's fine for kids, but I'm not a kid. I am an adult, so I'm going to judge it as an adult would. And again, we kind of talked about it. The animation doesn't really suffer. What does suffer, in my opinion, is the kung fu. I don't think the kung fu elements in this third film are anywhere near as good as the first two. There's nothing in this third film in terms of like the fight choreography between any of the characters that I think matches the first one with, the bridge sequence with Tai Lung, or Tai Lung's escape scene, or that great final fight with Poe and Tai Lung, or the second film, with the cannons and that whole fight sequence inside of the palace when things start catching on fire and blowing up and you get that great harsh red lighting. You just don't get any of that in this film. Like they try to do some fight sequences and they're not horrible, but they're just not memorable. And again, a lot of that maybe ties into the writing too. I'm not invested in the villain. I'm not really invested in the characters or the plot of this movie. So maybe it just is more noticeable, but I just cannot point to a single fight scene in this movie that comes anywhere near close to the first two in terms of like attention to detail or just choreography as a whole. So it's not that this movie's horrible. It's just that in comparison to the first two, it's just a real step down in quality. Whereas the second film felt like we want to tell this story. we want to develop these characters and move that needle, this felt like, hey, let's just make another Kung Fu Panda movie.
Yeah, this movie is kind of like almost what I anticipated the second one to be, where I thought it was just going to be like, but it wasn't. And then I got the film I was expecting in the third one.
Kung Fu Panda 3, Kung Fu Panda 3 is like the movie that you expect Kung Fu Panda 1 to be when you initially see the trailers. And you're like, this is going to be some dumb, goofy little movie. And it actually ends up being great, but this third film is exactly what you would have expected.
Yeah. I wonder if like the Kung Fu suffers because like, well, first off, so Kai's whole thing is that he sends his frozen green army, right? Like they're just like, and I like, so there, I don't know. There's like a limitation with like movement, so you don't really get any interesting kung fu movements in them. It's just, I don't even know. I'm trying to remember how the battles even commence, like how they play out with like the frozen.
Even the setup,
warriors.
Like it's not even just the fight choreography, but even the setup for the fight sequences feels lazy and kind of lackadaisical. Again, it really does just feel like, hey, we made a lot of money with the last two. Let's just make another Kung Fu Panda movie. People like these, but it just seems like they didn't understand what people liked about the first two. Though, what do we know? This movie apparently has better reviews than the second film, which again, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, none of these movies are that poorly reviewed. The fourth one suffers the most, but even then, it's not like that much. It's not really bad.
No, it's none of them are horribly reviewed, but I don't know. I just, again, for me personally, just what I loved so much about those first two films, just moving that story forward, the character work, the development, doing something new and interesting in that second one, really raising the stakes in an interesting way. I just don't feel those stakes in this third film, and I don't feel that planning, that preparation, that attention to detail that we loved so much in those first two movies. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't really have any positives that like stand out to me in this movie. I think Bryan Cranston does a fine job voice acting Lee. It's fine. They kind of introduce a love interest for Poe, which is just
that's what I wanted to talk about. So something I love that the first two movies do is that they never add in or change anything to be like a romantic. So like Tigress, I'm so glad that it was just a friendship.
Yeah.
And this movie, they introduce, is it Mei Mei?
Mei Mei, voiced by Kate Hudson.
Yeah. But I don't really, like, they introduce her as almost like, oh, this is a potential love interest now. But they don't do anything with that. There's really no, like, romantic element to this movie after that, after she's introduced, right?
She's not in the fourth one, so...
But even in the, like throughout the third movie, like there's no. But they
really just introduce her for Poe to be like, oh look, a cute panda, and then they just never. They don't develop it. Again, the film as a script, it feels so sporadic. The story feels all over the place, and the first two films had such a good level of focus in the narrative, whereas this is a 90-minute movie, just like the first two, but it just feels longer because
it does.
The script is just not at that level of focus. There isn't that attention to detail, and the movie just, in my opinion, suffers greatly because of all of those elements. I was really disappointed with this one.
Were you say more disappointed than when you first watched it, or was it about like the same?
No,
level?
I didn't. When I saw this in theaters, I didn't like it.
Okay.
Even at like 16, 17 years old, I was like, I just don't. As then I maybe was like, oh, this is just a dumb kids movie, and it is. But like as an adult now, it's more just I can feel the laziness in the production, and that's not on the animators. It's not on like that. It just feels like as a studio, as a film, it just didn't have that level of care and passion behind it. And I don't know, to me, you really feel it while watching. It feels like a dumb kids movie, whereas the first two are kids movies that have a little bit of intelligence. They respect the audience a little bit more, and you just feel that passion every scene. And I just missed that.
Yeah. I almost want to rewatch it so I can maybe like. Because again, like when you first watch these movies, it's kind of hard to like almost like analyze, especially if it's your first time watching it. Mm-hmm. So like the second time, I kind of want to see if I can pull maybe some more positives Maybe bring them to you. I don't know. Maybe not.
What really hits home for me is while looking into all of these movies, the amount of just awesome little trivia and cool little tidbits about the first two movies in terms of like all of the prep work, all of the research, all of the care and respect for Chinese culture and tradition. There's like zero cool, interesting facts about the third and fourth films. I wanted to try to, I wanted to try and sprinkle cool facts about all four films throughout them. But while I was looking into it, doing that little deep dive, I just didn't find anything that was interesting about the third or fourth film. So many, and I kind of talked to you a little bit about this before we started recording, but so many of the little trivia facts about the third and fourth film really boil down to just, oh, hey, the little TV series and video games that are tie-ins to the Kung Fu Panda series, they're not mentioned at all in the third and fourth film. And that's really all of the cool stuff you could find, and it's not cool. So yeah, I guess that is just very telling about like the prep process for these movies. But I don't know about you, if you have like positives that you want to highlight in this third film, but I really don't. I have so little to say about this one because it's just so forgettable and just so disappointing
Not really.
and underwhelming.
Like the weird thing is that there's nothing that I can point out that's like that bad. It's just like there's a lot of kind of things that are just there, and there's like some cool, like they still keep some of those like 2D montage sequences, and of course it looks great, but you know, we're in the third movie. I need more than just good animation. You know, I need you to like, especially when you maintained a level for two movies. So yeah, overall it was disappointing. I don't remember really checking the clock for the first two movies. I did for this one and the fourth one a couple times. So yeah, I lost focus, especially when he just went back to his home, and there was just like I don't know, it just felt forced to just integrate him back with his family, and just kind of like, I don't know, nothing felt like meaningful in this throughout the movie. So
it didn't. Something about the first two just felt so cinematic, and it felt, again, like you said in the second one, like the stakes were raised. In this third film, you just don't feel any of that. It just feels like just another entry in the series. It doesn't do anything new or interesting. We're just retreading stuff that we've already seen, and it just feels lazy. I don't know. Do you have many more thoughts on this one?
Not really.
No? Shall we move on to the fourth?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, guys. Do you need a break?
No, I'm good.
No? All right. All right, guys, moving on to the fourth and final film in the Kung Fu Panda franchise, Kung Fu Panda 4, released in 2024. And I think this is probably the most recent film that we've talked about on this podcast so far. Even some of the newer franchises and trilogies that we've tackled, like Fear Street, were still, 3-4 years ago at this point. This is the most recent entry, and it is directed by Mike Mitchell. It had a budget of 85 mil, so the only one in the series to be under 100 mil with its budget, and it shows, if you ask me. Box office of 547 million, so it made more than the third one did, but it has the lowest Rotten Tomato score, sitting at a 71%, which is easily the lowest in the franchise. Like Josh said, none of these are terribly reviewed, but this one easily has the lowest rating, with the first one being 87, the second one being 82, and the third having an 87. So quite the drop off in budget and Rotten Tomato score. Not that it's always the best, but it's what we're going with. Yeah. And I'm going to flat out and say it. This movie sucks. Kung Fu Panda 4, it just sucks. It's not good. It's not entertaining. It's not fun. One of the main characters is Awkwafina, who I have no problems with as a person, but is probably the last person I would choose to voice a character that's so prominent in a film, because I don't want to be mean, but her voice, a tad grating on the ears. It's not the most auditory, pleasant noise to hear. Awkwafina's voice is very raspy and kind of like knives on a chalkboard kind of thing, like, or nails on a chalkboard, whatever the fucking saying is. But so that's my kind of initial thoughts on Kung Fu Panda 4. How about you?
Viola Davis is good, like, in terms
she
of
is.
like, she's always gonna be good. I'm trying. So this one, it felt even more like paint by numbers thing. Like this one, I was predicting every single thing that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And even less personality than the third one somehow. I don't know. This one, I definitely was like checking my watch frequently. I was like getting like tired and like kind of bored. I'm trying to remember some of the moments that happened. So
let me set the plot up first.
Oh yeah,
because
yeah,
I forgot to do that again.
Read
If you guys are curious, after Poe is tapped to become the spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace, he needs to find and train a new dragon warrior, while a wicked sorceress plans to resummon all the master villains whom Poe has vanquished to the spirit realm. And this to me, I don't want to say shady. I don't want to say scummy, but the marketing for this film is a little shitty, in my opinion, because they heavily in this film, they market it as if the past villains of the last three movies, that being Tai Lung, Shen, and Kai, they market it as if they are prominent characters in this movie.
Oh, did they?
And they are not, because we don't even get J.K. Simmons and Gary Oldman back to voice the characters in this film. Not only that, but they find the laziest way to write out the Furious Five in this film, as at the beginning of the film, you're told that all the Furious Five are just off away on another mission or doing missions and whatnot. So you don't get Angelina Jolie back, you don't get Jackie Chan back, you don't get any of the Furious Five back. They have Kai, they have Shen, and they have Tai Lung in the film, but the only one that they were able to get back in the studio, I guess, was Ian McShane to voice Tai Lung. And they honestly kind of ruined Tai Lung's character a little bit, in my opinion, with how his story wraps up a little bit. But yes, you have a new threat, this chameleon played by Viola Davis, who is able to shapeshift into different creatures and wants to absorb the chi from all of the past villains and become this like super villain. So now I'm not going to say these movies are realistic. They're movies about anthropomorphic animals who do kung fu. I'm not going to say they're realistic. I'm not looking for a lot of logic in these, but it just felt, again, kind of like the third film where they were like, hey, let's just do something and make it bigger and bolder, but you're just retreading to the point where you're not even just retreading story beats. You are literally half-assedly bringing back old threats and old villains from previous movies in a, I don't know, nostalgia bait member berries kind of way. And again, the last two movies, Poe has to learn to be a teacher. He's got to learn to teach. We've done it twice already now. And now, fourth film, Poe's got to be a mentor and teach again. This time to, what is she, a fox? A fox played by Awkwafina.
So here's a problem I had.
What are we
it's
doing?
something that didn't make sense to me. How long has he been the Dragon Warrior? Now we're just cycling Dragon Warriors like every couple years. Like I don't.
I had the same exact question. Like he went from like the Dragon Warrior to the new master to, what is he in the third one? The spiritual leader or whatever.
Yeah.
Or no, that's this one.
No. He's the teacher in the third one, right? He's supposed to teach.
Yeah, I thought they gave him some new title. It just seems like in every one of these Kung Fu Panda sequels now, we're giving him new titles. And again, whereas in the second one, it felt like a progression. It felt like, Shifu saying, now you've learned enough, now you have to become a teacher, which, is fine. I'm fine with that. It develops his character, gives him a new challenge. In this one, again, it's not a new challenge. We're just seeing the same thing. And all I can think is, if we're choosing a new Dragon Warrior, why not one of the Furious Five? It's because DreamWorks is too fucking cheap to pay Angelina Jolie or Jackie Chan. I think Seth Rogen is the only one of the five who returns, and I think he has like one line of dialogue at the end of the film. Yeah, he has one line of dialogue in the movie, which, again, it just, so much of this felt like, if you thought that the third film was rehashing story beats and plot points and character arcs, this one just, again, doubles down on it. And now it's not just the second time that we're seeing this. Now it's the third time. And by the fourth film in this franchise, you're just so tired out with these, you're just not giving. It doesn't do anything new. I know I said that for the last one, but this one really just, it's so lazy.
Because, I can kind of see some parts of potential in the third one where it's like there's things that could be engaging, but they just didn't do it. They just didn't execute it as nicely. This one, it I didn't think they had a purpose to make it. They just wanted to make it just
money,
just for money. And so you're set up with like, you know, Poe has to find this new dragon warrior, and then you're introduced to this fox that she's trying to he gets Oogway's cane,
the spirit staff or whatever.
Staff. So she's trying to steal that, and then I'm trying to remember how it like progresses into them forming like a partnership. I don't remember the transition. Like after she tries to get it and he stops her.
She gets arrested because she tries to steal the spirit staff. She gets arrested, and I think she makes a deal with Poe because he has to go to it's a new city, and I'm already forgetting the name of this new city. But he has to basically go to a new city this time, kind of like he did in the second one. But he has to go to this new city where the chameleon has taken over, and you know, she apparently knows the way into the palace or whatnot. And like Josh said, so much of this film is predictable because, he has to pick a new Dragon Warrior. And, here's this new character played by Awkwafina. Yeah. I wonder who the new Dragon Warrior is going to be. And, she's a shady thief. What's that? Cut to the third act of the film, and she betrays Poe. Turns out she was working with the chameleon the entire time. And the chameleon adopted her off the streets when she was a struggling youth, and she's been working for her this entire time.
This series loves adoption.
They really love adoption. They really love it. It's just, again, so now again we have a character like Tai Lung who was adopted off the streets by a master of kung fu or a master of whatever, and again we're just doing this again. There's not one thing in this movie that is exciting or fresh or new. The only thing is that the chameleon is trying to suck out the chi of all these old villains, and it's just an excuse to get these characters back to the world of the story. And I think the big reason, and the one interesting fact I had read about this, was apparently the inclusion of Tai Lung, Shen, and Kai. All of them were a very, very last minute addition to the film. And that also is probably given a little bit of credence because of how shitty the animation looks in this movie.
Yeah. So what about, because I noticed it as soon as it started, I was like, this looks too like polished and like,
there's no texture to any of the characters.
Yeah. And I was like, what am I seeing right now? Is this like a lack of, like, I don't even know what it was a lack of, but it just looked different. It didn't look as good. They definitely don't play around with the sequences, like the 2D sequences anymore. Really, they might have had one. They might have had one.
If they did, I don't even remember it in the fourth one. If you thought the third one was forgettable for me, this one, to me, it went in one ear and out the other because I just retained so little. Because every scene, I was just like, yep, seen that before. Oh, yep. There's that from the other movie. Like,
yeah. I don't know, man. I'm trying to remember like what the roles were from Lee and Ping. Like I just watched this too. I just watched it, and I'm like,
their whole side quest was stupid. Can I just say that? Like in the previous films, even in the third one, I didn't love it, and I actually was pretty down on that aspect where Ping and Mr. Ping and Lee are just going back and forth because they're arguing over Poe's affection. They have genuinely no purpose in this film other than, I guess, to pad the runtime, because what is really developed? I mean, you're given the excuse that they don't trust Poe, or they feel like Poe is going to get beaten by this chameleon or whatnot. But I'm sorry, the dude has beaten 3 genuinely strong villainous characters in the last 3 films, and in this fourth film, we need them to go on a journey after Poe, so let's just say that they don't trust him and that they don't think he could take down the chameleon. Okay, so the plot points and the character developments of the last 2-3 movies where these characters are learning to trust each other and learning to come to terms with each other's lives and all of that development, we're just going to throw that out the window because we need to get this movie to 90 minutes. And, we can't afford to bring back the Furious 5. We can't afford to bring back the voice actors for 2 out of the 3 previous villains. So, hey, let's just have, Mr. Ping and Lee go on this little side quest adventure after Poe. It's just very lazy. It's so transparent. And
you want to talk about lazy? How about the defeat of this chameleon? Because now, like, we're at the 4th film. This is supposed to be a culmination of all the villains. So you can't even like fathom the the amount of power this person has, and she gets defeated by like one move from the fox. What's the fox name?
Jen.
Jen.
Yeah, it's like pronounced like it's like either Zen or Jen.
Oh,
all I could think
okay.
when watching the movie was it sounds exactly like Shen, and I was like, why would they name a character something that's so very similar to Shen?
Yeah,
I just didn't understand.
She pulls this skablam move out of nowhere. I don't even know like where, like how does she like harness that move? And it's just like one move that defeats the chameleon.
I don't know. So this is going to be crazy to find out if you didn't already know this. Apparently, they have 2 more Kung Fu Panda movies in the works, and I guess they always saw this franchise as being a 6-film franchise. So like, I don't know if they're just like setting up Awkwafina's character to be like the new protagonist of this second Kung Fu Panda trilogy, but she's just not interesting. She's just not. Maybe if they had given her her own unique character backstory, but like you said, these movies love adoption, and so we're just retreading that thread. And again, maybe if it wasn't so predictable that she was going to betray Poe and that she was actually working for the chameleon the entire time, maybe some of it would have landed. But her character is just kind of obnoxious throughout a lot of the film. I don't know if that's just me not liking Awkwafina's voice or if it's just the way the character is written, but either way, it really rubbed me the wrong way throughout so much of this film. And I don't know, Poe almost takes like a backseat for a decent part of it because he just doesn't feel like he has anything to do in this movie. If this was the first time Poe had to be a mentor or teacher, but I don't know. I don't know what else to really say about this movie. I was just, it's like, I was disappointed in the third film because the third film felt like a decline in quality, but you still had some semblance, some little elements of the previous 2 that were in it. And I don't think the third is very good, but at the very least, it had some solid animation. This one, it declines in the writing, it declines in the character work, it declines in the animation. If you thought there was no interesting fight choreography in the third one, there is not one memorable fight scene in the fourth film. The entire climactic fight with the chameleon, when she turns into this giant amalgamation monster.
Yeah.
Like, she basically turns into all of the different previous villains and a couple of other ones that we've never seen or heard of all into one. So she just turns into this giant monster. And I think maybe the screenwriters thought that, oh, this is something new we haven't seen before. But it comes off as like really goofy, and I hate to say trying too hard because I don't think this movie tries that much in general, but it just felt like, oh, this is the only way we can really raise the stakes. Oh, you liked all these old villains? Well, time to see them all morphed into one monster.
Yeah.
I don't mean to sound too angry, but
no, well, at least with Kai, you had some kind of like originality there a little bit. This one's like it's really harping on the fact that it's a chameleon, so it can shapeshift. It's like a cool element to add to the villain. So I think that's what they were maybe banking on, because that is all that is there with like any like interesting element of this villain is that like, oh yeah, she could shapeshift. That's like a cool thing, and that's it. But like nothing else.
It's just another physical threat.
And what is? Oh, her whole motive is that she was like always looked down upon, like she was never seen as able to like make it in terms of like the masters that were before her, right? Like she was kind of like
they told her she was too small, too fragile to be a Kung
so it's kind of like it's kind of like the same thing that they were doing with like even Poe in the first one. Just like it's the same exact shit.
It's the same shit, but it's underdeveloped and underwritten. Like,
yeah.
Whereas Poe, you get this full character arc. There is just not enough time in the script dedicated to this character. Definitely not nearly as much as Shen or Tai Lung, where it's, dedicated to really developing this character. You're just given these brief little moments of dialogue where it's like, oh, this is why I'm evil, and then it moves on. You never feel any sympathy. They don't really play on those emotional beats at all in any strong sense of the word. Like, they just kind of gloss over a lot of the details and a lot of the moments that should have been played up. But I mean, I'm sorry, guys. I know you maybe wanted us to go into more detail on the third and fourth film, but if you've seen the first 2 movies, you've seen the third and fourth one, because it's just greatest hits highlights of what made those first 2 movies work, just without the legwork, without the passion, and without the creativity.
Yeah. And, if if you're disappointed with the 3 and 4, a lack of depth that it's because they gave us lack of depth in the 3 and 4. So
yeah,
there you go.
and again, it's like, whereas like where a live action movie, maybe we could kind of talk about, one thing that really pissed me off in this movie, I kind of highlighted how in especially the first two, and they do it in the third one, but the choice of music is like very intentional, purposeful. It has ties to Chinese origins and tradition. A lot of Chinese traditional music is played throughout those films. There is genuinely a sequence in this film that does a no lyrics version of Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it's when they're in the alleyway, and like that's when Poe's like, there's not enough time for a drum solo when she's like banging on the drums. The music is just like they're using Chinese instruments and like traditional Chinese music notes, but they do Crazy Train just in like a traditional Chinese way. And it's not clever, it's not cute. It's just, why am I hearing Ozzy Osbourne music in a fucking Kung Fu Panda movie? I also have a problem too. The fourth film is the first one that actually where Poe refers to himself as the Kung Fu Panda. The other 3 movies never mention that once, but in the fourth one, he actually says, "I'm the Kung Fu Panda," which, come on, how on the nose are we getting? I understand they're movies made for kids, but if they can get by in the first 3 films without doing it, I think they can get by without mentioning it in this one. And again, like Shifu, like what? Like Shifu has nothing to do in this movie. If they even brought Dustin Hoffman back, if you're gonna at least if you're gonna get rid of the Furious 5 and you're gonna vaguely show the 3 villains, but again, not get the voice actors back for 2 of them, like you really couldn't have paid Gary Oldman and Kai for like one recording session where they recorded a couple of lines of dialogue. Like,
yeah.
And like again, like Poe defeats what's her face? Poe and Aquafina's character, Zen, whatever her name is, when they defeat the chameleon, like you get this moment where all the characters that Poe's defeated and those other like villains that are in the spirit world, they like bow to Poe, and they're like Tai Lung has this moment where he's like, maybe Shifu did make the right choice. Like Tai Lung would never say that. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's like
never
a nice
bow
like
down to Poe.
It's just a nice sugar coat over like everything that came before, just to like.
It's a shit coat. It's not a sugar coat. It's a shit coat. It's a coat of shit. And I just, again, like this is where like when I get into debates and arguments about when it comes to animated films is, they're just for kids. Why are you being so harsh? Because I have 2 prime examples of Kung Fu Panda movies that are excellent, that are very well handled with a lot of care and passion. And now I have 2 that are just really run-of-the-mill, rudimentary, by the numbers rehashes. And it just feels lazy. It just feels really disappointing. And the fact that I know that they're going to pump out at least 2 more of these, I am just not looking
I'm
forward
excited.
to what.
I'm excited.
I'm not,
because I wonder if there's a chance they see that there's like a decline in the fourth. It's not likely, but what if they do and there's quality?
They made
back
more
in the
money
fifth?
than the third one, so they're not making any changes.
Ah.
If a studio keeps making money, they are not going to make changes. And this one made more than the last one, so they might double down. They're probably going to lower the budget to 50 mil. You might not even get Jack Black in the next one. I don't know.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
going to be Kung Fu Panda without the panda.
Wait, so this one made, you said 550 million?
Yeah. 571.
571. And what, the second one made the most or the first one made the most?
I think the second one made the most. It was like over 600 something. It's like 660 or something of that sort. But
well, didn't they kind of made more on the second one? They made the most. I mean,
I made the most on the second one, and then they lowered the budget for the third, and they still made a good amount of money. So
yeah.
Either way, I mean, I'm really tapped out. I really don't have anything left to say.
Yeah, no,
Unless
that's
more.
That's all. No, that's all you guys are getting for Kung Fu Panda 4.
The third one has a couple of moments that are okay. Again, the fight choreography is not good, but the animation is still pretty strong. This one just really just lowers the quality in every single aspect.
This one's very flat.
Music, the characters, the writing, the animation, all of it, it really suffers. And again, like what pisses me off the most is just like the really scummy marketing. At the very least, the third one didn't promise all of these member berries nostalgia bait things, and the fourth one does, and it doesn't even deliver on the nostalgia or the member berries. So
And not to
I don't
mention, like I said in the beginning of the episode, it's confusing with the spirit realm. I don't know if Tai Lung dies, if like anybody that is in the spirit realm, if you could just get sent there or if you have to die to go there because
Tai Lung gets sent there. Kai was from the spirit realm and broke out, but Shen just dies. And I don't know why Shen gets to go to the spirit realm.
yeah. So yeah,
I don't know. But all right. So you ready to get into scores?
yeah. Do you want to start and then I'll do 2 and 4 first?
Sure.
Cool.
I'm gonna give Kung Fu Panda 1 from 2008. I'm gonna give that movie an 8.4 out of 10. I really, really enjoy it. It's my, well, I'm gonna spoil there. It's my favorite of the 4. I really love it. I think all of the character work is great. And yeah, 8.4.
I am gonna go with a solid 8 out of 10 for Kung Fu Panda.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, kick us off with the second.
Ah, man, this is so hard. They are so on the same level. I almost want to give them the same score, but I think I'm just going to go an 8.1 for the second, just to show my love for it a little bit more. But they're so equal for me.
0.1 for Shen.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to kick off the third one. I'm going to give Kung Fu Panda 3 a 5 out of 10. Just a flat 5.
Wait, what's your second rating?
Oh, for Kung Fu Panda 2. Oh my gosh. Well, spoiler alert for my Kung Fu Panda 3.
I didn't hear you say 3 and I heard 5 out of 10. I was like, what the hell?
My bad, guys. Kung Fu Panda 2 is getting a clean 8 out of 10. I like it a little bit less than the first one, but it really does a lot of great stuff, and I completely understand why the second is a lot of people's favorites. But so yeah, Kung Fu Panda 3 is getting a 5 out of 10.
I think I'm going to settle with a 5.5 out of 10 for 3.
All right. And kick us off with the last one.
4.5 out of 10. Kung Fu Panda gets.
Right. That's pretty good. It's generous. I'm giving the fourth Kung Fu Panda a 4.1 out of 10. I just really hate it, and the nostalgia really pisses me off, and it feels very lazy.
I think after this discussion, though, those 3 and 4 could go down a little bit more into the lower parts of it, honestly. But yeah.
All right. Well, guys, thank you for listening to our Kung Fu Panda franchise deep dive. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope if you liked the third and fourth one that you didn't think that we were too harsh. It just, to me, they just are really big step downs from the first two, which are really, really excellent animated films. But continuing our trend of animated films, we are doing the entirety of the Shrek franchise in April to give you guys a little bit of a heads up. So we have 3 episodes coming out in April, as there are three weeks that we are going to be having in April where we release episodes. So in the first episode, we are going to be doing Shrek 1 and 2. The second episode is going to be Shrek 3 and Shrek 4. And then for the last episode of April, we are going to be tackling both of the Puss in Boots movies. So if you guys don't want to be spoiled and you haven't seen all the Shrek films and all the Puss in Boots, then definitely check those out before our next couple of episodes. But again, the next episode is just going to be Shrek 1 and 2. So stay tuned for that, guys. And again, thank you guys so much for the support. We really appreciate it. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/franchise deep dive. If you want to check out some of our bonus content, we do Watchlist Wednesdays that air opposite of our regularly aired franchise deep dive episodes. So you'll get an episode on Tuesday, 1 week of our main episodes. And then if you are a Patreon subscriber, $2 a month, you get access to all of our extra content. The next following week on a Wednesday, you'll get a bonus episode where we just talk about one film. We take turns recommending each other movies, so definitely check that out. But that's really it for me.
Yeah, so guys, as always, please give us a follow on Instagram. It's where you're going to see the most activity on there. Interact with us through DMs or comments. Always love to see feedback on what you guys like, what your opinions are on the movies we're doing, and any series you want to see in the future. Just let us know. Can also always email us at franchisedeepdive@gmail.com, and obviously on Instagram, franchise deep dive. You'll see us there. But yeah, I'm excited to continue the DreamWorks trend.
Hell yeah.
Maybe we'll throw in the Shrek musical. I don't know. Probably not. No, absolutely not.
No, we should. No, it's okay. Well, either way, guys, thank you again for listening. Yeah, that's it for me. Goodbye.
Later.